Start recording. So basically, I think we're gonna try to focus on kind of explain the concepts, and then in the class we'll do lots of exercises. So we'll try and not be teaching all the time, but mostly it's gonna be you kind of doing the hard work of getting to learn these concepts. So it's gonna be bit of teaching, and then it's going to be exercises, bit of teaching and exercises, and then we'll help you doing these exercises.
JavaScript or HTML?
What, sorry?
You are teaching JavaScript or HTML?
So this course is JavaScript. It is JavaScript 2. If you want to check out the things that we are going to be teaching, do you know this site? Yeah, you probably do. Yeah. So it's like Hack a Future CBH JavaScript, and down here you can see the overview of the different things that we are going to teach. So this is what we're going to be focusing on today. Functions, a bit of how functions are called. Then we're going to do a bit about DOM manipulation, and then some extra things around kind of making it easier to develop, but also making it easier for other people to read your code. Yep. And then basically we're going to look at some array manipulation next time, some JSON, and then we're going to go into querying some servers with some HTTP requests, but that's for later on. So let's get to it. So basically how I kind of... Hey? Yeah, good?
You're all set?
Yeah.
Yes.
How do you go with exercises?
You should check that.
I should check them?
Yeah.
Are you Marco?
Yeah, he's
Okay,
Marco,
okay, perfect.
He's
Yeah.
the famous Marco.
The one we've been hearing about. Cool. So do you want to go through the homework?
I'm just
or?
asking if they had questions with exercise. I know you're picking up again two functions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice, because I was a bit quick last time. But I want to know if there were issues with the exercise that some of you didn't do last time. And if you didn't do, fine, try to do it next time.
Yes.
They can check it for me. Okay. Alright, I got to write with the Node class.
Okay.
Because his assistant is sick and I'm replacing.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. See you.
See you, Marco.
Cool.
Bye.
See you. Bye. Yeah. Yeah, so how I want you to kind of start a new class is when we do these exercises. I don't know if you have done this before. You might think this is like super simple, but if that's the case, that's good. So I like by starting, let's just delete this, by creating a new folder. You don't have to do this right now, but you'll get it to do it when we do the first exercise. So create a folder called week 3, and then the first thing is not create another folder, but create a new document. Let's call this index.html. You know what that is about. So first create your index.html, and then afterwards you can create your main.js. So basically now we have the two files that we can kind of get to work with. Then we go into the index file. And to run the JavaScript, do you guys know what we need to do? Have you got an idea?
What do you mean? Like HTML, but I don't know.
It's like CSS, where we import the CSS, but we need to do that now with the JavaScript. So first we just create the tags that we always do. You don't need to do this the browsers will do that automatically for you, but it's just helpful for you guys here. So we create the body tag, and then what I want you to do is in here we create the script tag, and that's basically, now we are telling the browser the JavaScript that we want to load is main.js file. How we do that is we say source equals main.js. So now we have told the browser that the file we are looking for when we want to run our JavaScript is called main.js. Then it can be quite helpful before you actually begin to kind of doing a lot of your programming, but just to go into the main.js file and just console.log scripts loaded. Have you seen any of this before? This console.log?
Yo.
Hello, sit down and have any, no, a little bit maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically what this does, let me just spell that correctly, console.log, it logs a message or a variable or an array or function or whatever you log to the browser that you're using, and I'll show you just in a second how that looks. But basically when you start an exercise, always begin with this and see if you have the script loaded, because if you have that, you know, you can start doing all your programming, blah blah blah, function for. But this is kind of important because now you know you have a connection. Because last time we saw a lot of people who would just, you know, go into JavaScript and just start programming, like programming, and then they would go into their index and they would load up and they're like, nothing's happening. Well, that's because the connection hadn't been made yet. Okay. So when we open up this index.html file, we have the browser as you've seen before, but we actually haven't put anything into it yet. So if we, for example, let me just find the index page over here. So if we, for example, make a div that just says hello, hello. Now we're gonna see a div with hello. Cool, we are happy. Now if you right click, you can choose the inspect. When you do this, you see this is called the web development tool that Chrome has made for us. And basically it's for web developers like us to kind of go in and check how does the HTML look? What are we logging to the browser? What things are we loading? And lots of different things. You can check performance, security. But what we're going to be working with is this console. Because when you saw, we wrote this in the JavaScript console.log, it tells the browser, hey browser, I want you to log this string called script loaded. Okay? So just to repeat, you right click and you go inspect. In Windows you can press F12, and in Mac it's Command Alt I, Command Option I. Then you'll get this, and then you can go into the console. But have you seen this before? Yeah. Yes? Okay, perfect. Cool. So now we have loaded a very simple script. Now we can begin today's lesson. So first I'm going to create a function called cake logger. This takes number of cakes. Oops. let's create a for loop. Cakes I plus equals yes, and what we do in the end is we return the cake string. Cool. Does anyone have an idea what this function maybe does? What it does? Can someone tell me?
How many
How long the cake is spinning, I think.
How many cake there?
Nope. So, okay, let's begin. Have you seen this before?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So, what happens if we remove this? What happens in here?
Nothing.
So right now, nothing happens because we haven't called the function. But, okay, I think I'll try and explain just...
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Yes, you should give the cake log a number and then it loops over and
Yes.
print sometimes cake in the cake string.
Yes. So how do we call this function?
So we say cake log and then parentheses and
Yes.
give it a number.
Okay. That's maybe a bit too many. Okay.
So it will print give 8-time cake, 10-time cake into cake string.
Yes. Yes. So basically, we call cake logger, and it first of all it creates a variable that is just an empty string. Then it makes a for loop where it loops the number of cakes times. So that means if number of cakes is 10, it's going to go into this loop 10 times. If number of cakes is 2, it's going to enter into this loop 2 times. Yes. What we do in the loop is we take this string that is empty to begin with, and then we just add to it cake space. So if we just write that the first time, it'll just say cake and then a space here. So then cake string is equal to this. The next time we come into the loop, we just add it in the end. So then we write cake and a space. So basically it's a string that just logs cake space, cake space, cake space, the number of times that you kind of call the function with. Okay, so does anyone know what this is called in...
Argument.
Yes, no,
Parameter.
yes, it is called the parameters. And can someone explain me what that means, that this is a parameter?
This is the value where it takes the argument.
Yes, yes.
Sorry, what do you say?
So this is the it's the parameter that takes the argument. So basically, this is called the argument, and this is called the parameters. I sometimes mix them up, but I try to remember them by, if I have like, you know, a big machine thing, and I had to kind of change some parameters on this weird machine, right? It would be like dials and putting in numbers like that. I would call parameters, and that is kind of what we do with our function. We say these are the things you can kind of turn and press and do with, that controls how the function is going to act out. And then what we give to the function is called the argument. Okay, but basically the parameters, they act as a placeholder, and it's kind of important that you get this concept. So when we run the function, number of cakes is a placeholder for what when we call it with 10. It is, yeah?
I've seen, I have worked a lot with functions, and
Mm.
I've seen that they use the parameter, but they don't, after they have used the function, they don't print the functional. You know what I mean? They don't use the argument.
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
No, it's a big deal.
Okay, but basically, do you get what?
No.
No. But basically, number of cakes is a placeholder. So it takes what we give here to the function. So the argument now is number of cakes. So that means number of cakes here is equal to 10, okay? When we call the function with 10. So it's like number of cakes, it's replaced, it's a placeholder for the number of 10. So it's a placeholder. The same if we do like this and say cake number, and we give it in here. It's the same now, number of cakes. It is still 10, but it's a reference to cake number. If we change this to 20, now number of cakes in here will be 20. Okay, it's a placeholder. It's like number of cakes is equal to 20.
Can you run this function to the console log?
Yes, sure. So, yeah, of course I should do that.
The cake string, cake plus one, so you can see it better.
Yeah, you want to see in here or?
No, this one, cake string,
Ah.
plus equal cake plus I, so we can see it better. So cake 1, cake 2,
I can log out I, or maybe cake string. Okay, and let's log out number of cakes.
All the ones that are here.
Okay, so now we see what happens.
Just play Minecraft.
Yeah, it's from another class.
Who's that?
It's from another class. I don't know. Maybe there is like an actual program or something.
But how can it take over this?
Because it's shared. That's why we can do it sometime.
Ah,
So you can go speak with him.
Yeah, can you do that though? Nice.
Did you recognize the guy? Yeah.
Yeah, but that's weird because it should kind of take this as the main. Just try and restart it.
I mean, in website. So we finish with HTML. I don't know what we should target. Things what we made it on, on website. Because the website when you make it's not possible to run without JavaScript.
Yeah, we'll get to kind of how they interact with
That's
JavaScript.
how it runs each paragraph and title, these things, and most of the things like image and those things.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
This thing is I'm just looking for it.
Okay, we'll get to that here. It's always good with some Minecraft to begin with. No, it's still connected. Maybe we can just pull this out.
Is it done?
Well, now I've pulled it out, so
Let's try this one.
I guess it should be.
The children were playing, like, watching some sausage.
Well, this is
This is not actually on my notes. Maybe choose space.
easy. It should be this one.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Okay. So we're seeing the script loaded.
Recording as well.
Sorry, are you...
What? Sorry?
Are you recording now?
Yeah. I've been recording all the time. Yes. So basically we are seeing 10, which now that is the number of cakes. If we can see the code here side by side, right? So 10 here is number of cakes. That means 10 acts as a placeholder for the number 10. After that we see cake string, which is first cake space, which I showed you over here, and then it's just adding to the string, add. And the adding takes place here. Plus equals is like writing cake string equals cake string plus this. So it's adding to itself all the time. So this is like a shorthand for that. And then we return. But if we remove this and we remove this, what are we gonna see now in the log when we run this code?
10 clicks.
Nope.
If you remove log?
If we now, with this code, if we log that out, if we run this code, what are we gonna see?
Nothing to the
Yeah.
console now.
We're not gonna see anything. We're gonna see the script loader that is up here, but we're not gonna see anything. So what now if we want to log out the cake space, what do we have to do?
Console log and clicks.
Cake logger.
Yes. We can console log, and then we have the string. Okay, and that's, but you've seen that when we return the cake string, when we call this, we get the result. So we can also assign this to a cake string result, and that will be equal to cake space. Okay, cool. But what I want you to remember is that this is a placeholder, and it's kind of replaced by 10. Cool. So now we're gonna kind of change this a little bit, because in JavaScript, and this is a little bit weird for people who have been programming in other languages, but in JavaScript you can actually make a function, you can kind of assign it to a variable, which is a little strange, because in other languages, you know, you can make an array to a variable. That makes sense. You can make an integer, a string, an object, you can make that into a variable. But in JavaScript, you can also make functions into variables. And that's a little weird. So let's see how that looks. So let's make a new variable called cake_logger const. Can someone explain me what the const means?
Never going to change.
Doesn't change.
Yes. So what happens if we change it?
So,
It don't change. Error.
you'll change whole the function, I think.
No,
No.
it will actually not run.
Yeah, in error.
So if we do, so here we, no, not like this. If we do const test and assign it to the string of test, and we do another const down here, this is going to give us an error. It says uncaught syntax, identifier test has already been declared. And that's a good thing, because then JavaScript won't just run and kind of try to change it even though it is a constant and change it into it just says you've done something very wrong here, and we are happy about that, because then we know before we run the code that there's something wrong. Anyway, we can actually do a function as a constant, and it works nearly exactly the same way as if we did it just as a function. So that means, okay, so how do we call this function with, let's say, 5? What are we going to write? Do you guys think?
What do you say? Sorry. I didn't-
So how are we gonna call this function now?
Cake_logger const equal function and then
We're actually gonna do it just like before. Yeah. So now instead of it being a function that has no name, because we didn't say anything here, but it's a function that has no name, is assigned to a cake_logger constant. And people kind of code in different styles. It's just kind of important that you know that you can also do it this way, where you take a function and you assign it to a variable. So that means if we try and log this out,
You missed the alphabet.
thank you guys. Okay, so at line 27, we're gonna see cake. Cool. So that's. Oh yeah, one thing I want to show you about this is that we can kind of take this constant and we can throw it around. We can give it to a function. We can that function can call another function. We can set it as a value on an object. We can do lots of things with it now. It's a constant, and that can be kind of helpful. So I just want to show you one thing that we can do, and let's make a function that.
Hi.
Hello?
Yeah.
So what is this called, what we put in here? Yes, parameter. Let's call it test function A. Okay. What this function does is
What?
hey, short cake Okay, so now we have made a function called test function A, and this function has a parameter called function to call. What it does is it takes this function to call, and then it calls the function with 2, with the integer 2. It assigns it to a constant, and then it logs it out. So what we can do now is we can actually call test function A with cake logger constant. Let's remove this. Okay, so now we have this variable or constant that is a function. What we do down here is we call another function with our function cake logger constant, and then this is put into function to call, and it's called. So function to call in here, what does that if we log function to call out here, what are we gonna see? What is our function to call in here?
This function, eh? I don't understand.
It's
Wait,
the
what's happening?
All this code inside the function. It's just run all this code inside the function. So it's done. But what does that do? The function to call to? I don't know what that.
Okay, yeah. So just as before, where we've created a function that has a parameter called number of cakes that acts as the placeholder. So when we call it with 10, suddenly number of cakes is equal to 10. Because that is like what the parameter is. It's a placeholder. So number of cakes is kind of replaced by 10. So as we saw before, when we log number of cakes in here, we see 10, because that's what we call cake logger with. If we change this to 20, then in here we'll see 20. Okay, so this is the placeholder for this number. Okay, it's exactly the same down here. It's just a little bit weird because now function to call is a placeholder for what it's being replaced by cake logger function.
So it's 10, but you want two of them.
Two of
Yeah,
them?
what
Two of
does
the
that
cakes.
two mean?
Like it's like you wrote 10.
Okay, this could be whatever. This could be 10 or 20. This is just kind of what we have decided to call it with. And we can do this thing where we say short cake string is equal to 2, and if we want to make a long one, we can say const long cake string equal to 20. So now function to call is replaced by what? It's replaced by cake logger constant, yes. And that is in itself the function that we made before. But let's try and run this and see how it looks. Let's comment this out and let's run this. Okay, so what we see function to call is equal to now then is this function that takes number of cakes, cake string. So it is literally this. So what we can actually do, if we wanted to do this in another way, but it's going to be that would be a little bit but basically this function is equal to this.
What does number 2 and number 20?
That's just numbers that we have given it. It could be anything. So to kind of run through what happens when we call function to call with 2, function to call is equal to cake logger constant. Okay, that's the placeholder. So that means where did I put it?
I don't know.
I put it right here. So when we say this function to call it to, it is exactly the same as doing cake logger constant with 2.
So it's basically part of the name. It's like saying cake 1, cake 2, cake 3. I don't get it.
So the function that I've made is just it's just a weird function. I can show you how it looks when you call it.
To pass the number of cakes as an argument to the test function A. No, so it kind of make more sense for them. So
What? Sorry.
You can pass like the number of cakes as a parameter to test function A. Test function A pass the I don't know. That kind of makes sense.
Oh, in here?
Yeah. So you can see
yeah.
that it's just parameters like the function and the number.
Yes, that's a
I
good
don't know
idea.
if that make more sense.
So let's change this up a little bit and say 20 here, and then what we do
And remove one because
is we return the cake string. Okay, so now what we do, let's make this big, is test function A takes 2 parameters. The first one is a function.
Now we
It's
understand.
literally, okay, good, I'm glad. The first parameter is a function, and the second one is the number of cakes that you want in your string. It's an integer, right? So the first one is a function, and it's weird, it's very weird that a function as its parameters takes another function. But what I want to convey to you is that it's just a variable. It doesn't matter if it's an array or a function or an integer or object, whatever. It could be anything because we are in JavaScript land, which is a bit wacky.
first class citizen.
Yeah.
First class citizen.
So when you see something like this, how I want you to think is, you see a function and it's like, function to call? What? Like what does this mean? Well, this is just a placeholder. This is being replaced by what our argument to the function is. So don't look at it like function to call. Look at it like we're just calling it like this, because that is literally what is happening in the code. It's replaced by cake logger constant. Like the number 2 is replaced by how was it? Was that like number of cakes? Sorry. Oh, I did that wrong. So function to call is equal to this, and number of cakes is equal to this. It's being replaced. They just act like placeholders, and this we can understand.
Yes.
Because cake logger constant, okay, we go up and we see it takes number of cakes, it loops through, and it returns this just weird string, right? So, and that's why it's like parameters, well, they're just placeholders. They get replaced by something else. So just take, okay, the first function, what is the first parameter that we call test function A with? It's cake logger constant. Okay, so that means in this instant, this is what happens. I basically just replace, and that is what, let me just do. So this is how it looks kind of originally. Then we call it with cake logger constant. This is basically what JavaScript does. It says, oh, this is equal to this. Function to call is equal to cake logger constant. Cool. Now it looks at the next parameter. It says number of cakes. Well, number of cakes is 2. So I'll go into the code and I'll replace it with 2. So this is how the code kind of looks in real life. Okay? So if you think of the parameters as placeholders, it's a little bit easier because this can get a lot more abstract, but as long as you just say, oh, well, it's just replaced by this value. And you can try and just literally replace it and see what happens, if that makes it a little bit easier for you to understand. Okay?
Is it recording?
What, sorry?
Yeah, is it recording?
Yes, it is recording. Cool. Now I want you to do an exercise. Or maybe I'm gonna do this just a little bit more crazy. not a lot, because you kind of have seen the worst part of it. Function to call to. So now we have another function called test function B. Just like test function A, as its parameters, it takes a function. So let's actually do exactly like before. Say number of cakes. And then in here we call test function B with function to call and number of cakes. Okay, so now it's like one level deeper. It's still exactly the same concept. Okay? Let's call this 2 as well. Okay, so let's do just like we did before, where we said, well, this is not terrifying for us because we know we can just replace it. So we take cake logger constant and we replace it, right? So everywhere where it says function to call, we just replace it with cake logger constant. Okay, we know that. Number of cakes, we replace that with the number 2. Okay, now this doesn't look as terrifying, right? But now we have another function. So we just do exactly the same thing with this function as we did with the other. So function to call to, that is the parameter, is now equal to what? What do we replace this with? When we call test function B with this, what is this equal to? Yes, perfect. So now we replace this cake logger constant, and what is number of cakes gonna be? Yes, it's equal to 2, and now it makes a lot more sense. Okay, but this is what happens. So it's not quite as terrifying. But what we do is we are kind of making a constant that is a function. And then we're just throwing it around. We're saying, hey, test function A, take this constant. And it's like, yeah, I don't care whatever it is. Oh, it's a function, fine, I don't care, And then what we do in test function A, we call test function B and say, hey, test function B, I have a function for you. It's just a constant. So it's like, oh, I don't really care, And that's how you should think. They just act as placeholders, and they could be functions. Okay, cool. Now I want you to do an exercise. So if you go to this page, I think you know it. Otherwise, I can paste it in the Slack. Then you go to week 3. You know what? I should just paste this code instead. Okay, so I've made a JavaScript file for you, and we're gonna do exercise 1 now. And like I told you in the beginning of the class, when you start with these exercises, make a new folder called week 3, make an index.html file, reference the JavaScript in that, and then you can kind of first log script loaded, and then you can start kind of doing all of your coding.
Why
What?
don't you use the Node.js?
What, sorry?
You don't use the Node.
No, but that's because in this class we are going to be working a lot more with the browser, changing the DOM and querying HTTP requests, and it's just very helpful that we are moving from Node over to the browser. Okay? So, to reiterate, can you all look up here? So I've made a folder called week 3. In that folder there's 2 files. One called index.html, you've done that before, and then another one called main.js. Okay? The index file, it looks like this. You don't need this. The only thing you need to do is you need to say, hey browser, I have a script that I would like to load. The source of that is main.js, and that tells the browser that this is the file that we want to load. You actually don't even need this. You just need this. Okay? And then the first thing I want you to write in the main.js, just as we did, is script loaded. Okay? What I want you to do for the exercise is I want you to create 2 functions that are actually variables. Okay? One of the functions, it should return just your first name, and the other function should return your surname. So very simple. Or not simple, but a function, for example, get first name, then you make a function, and you can just return the string of, in my case, Benjamin. Okay? But you assign that to a constant, exactly like we did here. Okay? So when you have made those 2 functions, one that returns your first name and one that returns your surname, then you create another function that's called full name. This function, it takes 2 functions as parameters, the first name and the surname, and then this function should log out your full name. So it should kind of call the first function, assign that to a variable, and then, does that kind of make sense?
Kind of.
Kind of. Okay, but we'll help you. So don't worry too much about it. But to begin with, create the index, reference your JS and all this. Oh yeah, I want you to work in pairs, by the way. We did that last time. So can you 2 work together? And then you 2 here?
Yeah, try to.
You 2, and maybe
Well,
you.
someone's sitting here.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
you 2, and then you 3 guys. That would be nice. Makes it a little easier. Yes, exactly. The index and the HTML, just so they have something to reference by. So here you see how the HTML is done, and you can see how we kind of made a function that is assigned to a constant. So you can use that. Yes. So
first you need to declare that. You need to create 2 functions.
So, can I help with something?
I don't know. Valid function
Okay, can I see your main.js? Yep. So you've done it correctly, but for example,
First
if
we
you
make a
comment
function.
that line
Right?
out to begin with.
Let's write const.
No, not that line. This line.
Equals function.
Yes, and then run it in the browser.
And now get started
Function.
Yes, perfect.
First.
So this is what we want to see. Now we know we have a connection. Now we can actually start the melody. Yes, so if you go back. So now we want to do something kind of similar to the k-blocker constant, but just with a function that just returns your first name as a string. So yeah, you're quite well off.
But you are creating like two variables, and you should create two functions. And each function, like the first function should return the first name. So you are doing correctly, but instead of variables, you should like write functions.
It should return.
And you should assign these functions two variables.
should return the name
You can return back to your code.
because we're going to call another function is going to call this function.
So
And it's
you
new.
have first and you have last, but instead of putting variables in them, you put functions.
You don't need to do that yet. That's first when you make the full name.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, copy and paste to the initial function.
Ska man kopiera den eller?
I'm not sure. But I think this is
Ja, ja.
like
Det
a
är
function.
logiskt.
The first one.
Together, we should work together for.
And then we return the first string.
And before coding, just try to think about the problem.
Any sense?
لازم تفكروا بالمشكل تقولوا حل يعني
Because I already said
وبعدين
first
بتقولوا
name here, so I don't want to name it the same thing twice.
يعني لازم تعملوا مع بعض يعني لازم الفانكشن الأولى
How do I see if it works or not?
comes with يعني تجي تسمي الفاريبلز ولا الكونستنت تسميهم باسماء مينفول يعني اسمها معنى ما تسميه بيس يعني انا لما بدي اقرا الكود تاعك ما بدي افهم بس لما يعني تسمي فيرست ولا لاست تعمل
Yeah, okay.
Do you think the arguments the one we push it?
It shows it into the browser. But we don't have any HTML right now, so I don't know.
تعمل return يعني احنا قلنا بدنا two functions function الأولى بتعمل
I saw it on the phone. It was like a spec, but when I looked it on the browser, it was not like responsive.
Wait.
I just made it. Everything.
I was going here.
Why?
Why?
This one, I mean, I'm just
You can find out. Just need to see some lesson in these classes. So we did exactly the same thing last week.
Okay, but can you show me like what's making you struggle, what you are struggling on?
The question was, what else the task? Like,
You didn't get the task?
I did, but they were confused.
Yeah, like you should at least start like, just start like start reading the assessment or spec and start thinking about it.
Yeah, I was asking because I'm not sure if this is the correct. I wasn't here from the beginning, so I'm not sure about anything.
No, that's fine.
So I don't know if this
exercise
is correct or not.
Yeah.
This is
The second one, the custom Q&A, that is I did.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, nice. No, we need two functions. As variables.
Yeah.
so actually you are overcomplicating it a little bit.
Create two
Doesn't
functions
need
as
to be
variables.
this
So
difficult.
you already know how to create functions.
Oh yeah,
as
but
variables.
this is a little
Like
different.
const and you assign the
Okay.
function in the left and the
So
right
if you
side.
go into
So
the
just create two of
exercise,
them. And each function should return, like the first function should return the first name,
So it
your
says
first name, and the second function should return your
one
like,
second name,
yes, your
your
last
first
name.
name, and one that returns this.
But you should not write
so
out
you don't
something.
need
You
to,
should
it
write
doesn't say, you know, it
exactly.
needs to take a parameter that you can then set.
Just create two functions and assign them from
Need
different
to
consts.
return
Got it. Thanks.
as a string.
Just try to do
So
that,
it's-
not to that.
No, you don't even need that. No, you need the function
Okay.
because we need to do it as a function. Yes, exactly. Now, if you go into the function, and then, so if we want to return the string of Benjamin, what do we write?
Function. I don't know what.
You
Yeah.
write return,
Return
yes, space, and then you start a string, yes,
without
and then
columns
you,
or anything.
يعني
yeah,
السؤال
then you write
انت
Benjamin,
شو تقصد بس
Gonzalo, yes, and then semicolon.
شو تقصد يعني ده في الكود يعني مو
So now you've created this function. It's
يا بس
the only thing that
انا
happens
لما
is it returns your first name.
بس
Okay.
How are you
يعني
going to
انا
check
لما
that?
بدي اعمل كونسول لوج لفاريبل يعني لا نسميها
Log? No?
عندي فاريبل اي
Yes.
فيها خمسة بعمل كونسول لوج
Yeah,
لاي
exactly.
كونسول لوج بتعمل خمسة خمسة بتظهر كونسول بس كيف؟ لانه البروجرام تاعي بيعرف انه انا بدي انا عامل ديكلار على اي في البروجرام تاعي بس هي انا لما اشوف ما في
And you know, I would, in this lecture we're going to be working a lot more in the browser. So if you go to the browser
ما هي موجودة
and open your
يعني لما
index.html
لما
file,
تعمل كونسول دوت لوج فيرست ولا لاست
yes, now if you press
انا ما بدي اقولها بس انا بدي ايدك تفهم
هون انا عم بصح حتى مظبوط
يعني انا بدي ايدك تفهم
here,
انا كنت قادر اقول لك
and
اعمل
you can see. Okay, so that's kind of how we're going to be debugging in this course.
Okay, so no need for this.
No. But there's something not quite right about this. What is that?
It didn't return. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
So you have created a function and you are now just returning the function, or you're console logging the function.
Yeah.
But you haven't called the function yet. So you've just created the function, but you haven't called it yet. So the difference
يعني احنا تعلمنا شيء نعمل بارنتيسيس
how would we call the function? What do we do in JavaScript first?
بس يعني ممكن
What are the two
تعمل
signs that we make?
ممكن
No.
يعني technically it's possible
Now
بس ليش؟
Oh.
so now this is being called, and now we're giving the
اصلا هي syntax خطأ
That's why.
لانك ما ممكن يعني تعمل جملة
so this is here. We are just logging literally the constant first name, which is equal to the function, and that was what we saw. We saw like if return
Yeah.
Tala.
بس
So
Now we call it. Now it's being
تعمل
executed. Yes.
راح يصير
Call me. Return what you've got. Do what you need to do.
That's really cool. Don't you try this.
انت عملت first name ولا last name؟
What's the point of this one?
لما بتعمل
This is just to make sure you have a connection.
Based on input.
Because last time we saw a lot of people who start developing And then they would go into the index and were like, nothing's happening, why is nothing happening? Well, they hadn't made the connection. Maybe they had, referenced the wrong file here, or they hadn't done this before, or something like that. This is just to make sure that you have the connection. So I kind of want you to do that when you do homework as well, because that's probably the first thing we're going to ask you. Is like, do you see it? Do you see script note? Yes. And that's exactly why we do this. So we haven't completed the function correctly, the connection. Okay.
وخلصنا نفس الشيء. لازم
So
ترجع
we
للشيء
still,
يعني.
here we have just you say that the file that we're looking for is called JavaScript.js.
Yes, sure.
Do you have a file called JavaScript.js?
No, me.
Okay. So next
Can you see the error?
Yeah.
Can you see the error?
yes. So see, I actually you shouldn't have begun with writing the code. This is the first thing. You make sure that the connection is good. So if you go into the see now we're glad. Now we see script loop. So now we know the connection is there. Now it's something else. So first name is not defined. If we go into the JavaScript.
This.
Yes. No, into the JavaScript. No, this is a tricky one. So it says this one is not defined.
Which one you should use? I don't know what it's called. Yeah, just said it. Yeah, double quote. It's right. Yeah, double quote.
Yes. And those errors can be tricky.
Yeah, because you are like just to make.
That's right.
Let you are doing let Muhammad. What does it?
You need to have a space here.
What do you mean by that? Just explain to me. What do you mean by that? So we can agree on something. What?
It's a declare.
And then a semicolon.
Yeah, but when you declare, you put the variable name and not parentheses and inside that a string. Do you remember? For example, you do let name equal and string, and not let string equal. So it's kind of maybe you can. And why the parentheses?
Where do you have index
So
and
you can do that probably. You can do like name.
And then you open this in the browser. Yes.
Okay. You can do like that.
And now you write.
Let and after that parentheses and inside that like string. That's. Okay.
And then you go into the console. And there we go.
Should I try now?
Yes. Cool. So that's the first thing. I need to do the same but with the last name. Yep.
What was the name?
Yunus?
Yes. Now it's say undefined, so it's not print the names.
Yeah, because something. You are calling that for name.
I see
Which is
you're
this function.
overcomplicating it a little bit.
And when this function is true one
You actually don't need
or
to
two
take any
parameters,
parameters
but you are not passing anything.
because the
So my
function
name
should
and
just
my last name
return
are
you
undefined.
Yeah.
So if
You get the point?
delete that,
Just remove it.
yeah, exactly.
And then just
Yep. Yes. Yes. So what does it say in the exercise? Yes, you need to return to name, but by calling.
You can do that. Yeah, that's correct. You can do that.
Calling. How do you call in JavaScript?
You can just click normal data. Yes.
I would think it's not entirely right, but it's close. So the first thing I would do is I wanted to
Yes.
try
I don't
and
know how
call
to do
the
this.
first name function
To do what?
and log that out to
call
the
the
browser and see if you can get Mohammed.
Oh, just
To try and
something.
test if your function.
Before I need to
Yes.
emphasize something. For name is a function. It takes two parameters.
So yeah, how would we call the
But
first
the
name?
parameter they should be variables or something like that, and not function calls. So you are calling the function. You should not call the function there, no? I guess no.
Yeah.
So you should probably remove also these
Try and
parameters.
work that out and see what we get.
Full name.
Okay. So now you have access to these two functions
So
inside
what's
the
the
full name.
problem with
And inside the full name you can call these two
So
functions
we are not
and return
actually
them.
seeing
Or
your
return
first
the
name.
result of them.
And
We are seeing
we
the
call
function.
them how?
That's because right now we
Just,
are logging the
say
constant called
return.
first name. The constant called first name is just equal to a function.
First name.
Okay.
First name.
That
Yeah,
returns
exactly. You
your
call it.
But
No,
what is it we
you are
always
just
need to
now
do
you
the
are
function
returning just the
to
first name, which is
actually
Tala.
execute it.
So you need Tala and
Abuzan.
the same, yeah, Abuzan, like the last name. So
Yes.
just
We need
kind
to
of,
call
I don't
them.
know.
Yes.
You know how to like concatenate like
Before we
two
call
strings?
them,
Or
you
just put
need
two
to
together
say
with the plus sign.
Yeah.
Before we call them, we don't activate them.
So
It's just like they're just
That's-
idle.
Exactly,
and say,
plus
well,
last name.
I'm not doing anything because you haven't told me to, you know. But when you call it, then we get the result.
and then
But just before, now you will get Tala, Abuzan, like together. Yeah, exactly, it's get together. So you kind of need.
So now you need to do the same in
wait,
here.
I know how to do this.
I know.
This one I know.
What's the problem here?
Nice. Nice.
Yes.
But also there is something you are calling for
Still
name
a
here.
problem. You
Yeah.
can't do
And
this.
full name needs two parameters.
That's
You
just
are
strings.
calling it without any parameter.
Okay,
So you need
The first name and
No.
last name.
Exactly.
Yes.
First name. Oh, this is the last time I come late.
Okay.
So,
I'm gonna try.
I hope.
if you mean to do it another
Wasn't my fault. It was the train. Yeah.
Right, so
This is no, not like this.
Okay, yeah, you said that mine
Okay,
is
now I
combination
get it.
chemistry, and then I write mine.
Yes.
So
So
I don't know.
But so when they say here that
undefined.
call another function, create another function called full name that can take two functions as the parameters. They meant like this. They don't. I don't have to call them as functions. because
So
they
what
weren't.
I wanted
you
to do-
pass the functions and inside
So
the wrapper
get
function
full
or the
name,
container function,
like
you call
this.
these functions.
Okay.
That's the idea.
Create
I'm
another
not calling the
function
function outside and
that
passing
can
the
take
result.
two functions as parameters. So what you have done here is the function takes two strings as parameters. But you need
Yeah,
to
you should ask.
do these two functions.
Like I don't know what to do. Like
Get first
should I
name.
just come from
Return first.
No.
return.
لازم تعمل return.
Yeah, and then you
Yeah,
return
yeah,
the first name plus
Can you see the
last
assessment?
name.
The assessment.
And then you console log
Can you show
full
the
name.
assessment? Yeah, no, just here.
Full
You can
name
call
and
them
then
whatever you
like
No,
this.
But it would make sense to
yes,
call them
because
get first name.
you
But I
are.
changed, so
Get
it's
first
good.
name.
Yeah, this is what I got right now.
Yeah, can you?
Get is it's really nice of you.
It's the same.
Because that kind of really
Here you are saying last name equals Zahad, but Zahad is a variable.
Yes.
But you should put it like.
Yeah.
You got me? It's like Muhammad. You should put it in.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, I missed that.
So, yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.
And after that, in get full name,
Yeah.
See, it's perfect.
you can return.
Both IDs.
Like return
So
because
this
you're gonna
function
pass
should
the two
return
functions to
your
get full
full
name.
Yeah, I don't know why it
So
does
this
that,
is the
but
first
look.
function. This is the second function.
And then it's
So
perfect.
you just return
And
get
if I
first
go
name
to
parentheses. So you call the first function
It's perfect.
plus
But
get
then
last
if
name
I do
parentheses.
this, it doesn't
So you
work,
call
and
them.
I don't know why.
You call them both. You
I
just
tried everything.
concatenate them and you return.
Can you tell us
No, I will not write it. You should write
You
it.
can,
But I can.
but
You
in this exercise,
just say return.
these could be called something else.
And
It's just a
No.
coincidence now that they're
No, not parentheses, but like space.
I made the desktop first
Get-
and
get
then
first
I
name.
made tablets
So
and
what
put
is
them
the
together.
beta to write.
okay, last name?
Yeah, you
But
call
then
the
I already
function. So
started.
you
I
can
didn't
return the
think of
first name.
responsive demand, but this time I was like, oh,
Call the
shit.
function.
Try to think a little bit about just functions and
I just
how we activate
make
it.
it
You're very
responsive
close.
layout.
You're very close.
Remove the
Okay.
extra part.
So I would just try and
When the
get,
screen is less
you
than
know, try
800
first
pixels.
and call
And
this.
this we're just gonna
Call,
so
get
here
first name and see
the last
if you
time
get the right answer.
Then
Not
as
that
you
bad.
adjust to smaller size, then you mark it from there.
Okay, I try.
Okay, so we need the plus sign here and call get last name.
This
No, don't.
say
Calling the function is get last name with
first
first.
name is not a function. Okay, let's go back and see.
This is the one for tablets and smartphones with max width
Oh,
124.
yeah, I see the problem.
So
Why you didn't put it on,
When we
just,
call,
if you don't need to call it on
at the
screen,
end.
how do we call?
Doesn't
remove
it?
that
It has two
and
You're not
components.
calling the different
and
function.
you remove this one
Thing
off
and
from the
one
devices.
You need to
So
call
when-
the
so
different
this-
function.
If it's less
What do
than,
we need
That's
to
why
do?
Yeah.
You got this.
so if I do
Then
this,
open
remove
This
the
function.
one
You should call it
Yes.
so you can display it or
You
do
need to
something.
give an
with it.
end option.
You got my idea?
Two arguments. They should both be functions.
Now if you run the
You have
program,
to
we
it's
call
gonna
something now,
happen.
which is
Check that.
called
Because you are not calling
no-
any function.
Yeah.
So you should console.log something or call a function or do
I have to check the one.
Got
The
it.
width, I mean, the width
That's
of
the
Yeah,
basic
I would
one.
maybe
the margin and
just
these
to
things. So go to the phone.
say the
check it.
difference here. Okay,
See, it is perfect even when I
so
Yeah,
now
but before it was also
get first name
Yeah.
is the parameter for
No,
full
it's not
name,
gonna work.
and then you need to replace
Because you are just console.log
And now we
the
need
function.
to, when
You
we
are not
call
calling
them,
the
we need
function.
to give it two functions.
There's difference between the function and calling the function.
You
For
just call
example,
it.
here we are
And what this function is saying is
think we
like,
need to use
hey,
the
Can you just check this?
I told you I needed
That
two
something
parameters, but
Here,
you give it.
we have the function.
Okay.
The function here.
So we find out the two functions.
Yeah, but it's
Here,
only.
we do console.log, not the function, but the function
So, but-
call. So we call the function.
Exactly.
There's a difference between like this one.
Yeah.
That one seems to be.
The reference, like the cake logger const,
But sorry?
it's referencing cake logger const, the function.
Yeah,
No,
that's
but
But
Yeah,
how,
this
how
is
do we
for
call
passing the
tablets
parameter.
and 24.
You go
Yes.
down.
So we can
You
execute
try
it.
to go down.
And make it do something.
Down?
You got what I mean?
Oh wait.
Yes.
That's one.
Yeah.
problem. You have like
Hopefully.
400 or
But now we need
But
one
this is
for
for
try
tablets.
to
you go for a mix.
Yeah, but actually,
What about
this
the-
just
And
works
you,
fine.
the parameters, like what do we need inside this
You change-
one? What we want to, like get first name and get last name. And
Like
get
this.
first name each function.
I don't think
No, no,
it matters
but
because
Okay.
this is max
Function A
width
and
is
function B.
1024
So,
and then
get first
everything
name.
below
Now
is
we get an error
You
because
got it.
these are just
Get last name.
coincidentally called
That's
so
okay
we use
if you
these
wrote
instead.
your code.
But that's not what we want. We want
But
when
you
we
wrote your
call
code
these,
with
we want
this
to
blocks
use
here.
these two
That means what you have in your
parameters.
code is
Okay.
almost matching what is
So what do we want to
This is the
say?
same.
First name?
Yeah.
Yes.
Which you don't want. If you had made one for a smaller device first, then media query will be working for a bigger one. So what you wrote is the same like the one in media query. It's the
You
same.
see the difference?
So you need one for the smaller ones in media query.
less than 800 pixels.
Try run it and see.
Or maybe 900.
So what you need, what you should be working on there is
Yeah.
one for the smaller one. This one is not
for
necessary.
smaller, but this is for the small.
So now we get functions.
This is
So
from
we
like
get
0
functions
pixels to
inside.
1024
You're
pixels.
working on it.
Yeah, this
What
is the
is
max,
the
so
other? Just like
like
we-
it reaches
like
the
we
max
did
and
before.
everything below it, it also
No.
applies to it. Yeah, see?
Okay, you
You know what I
know
would
the
do?
problem.
I would do
Yeah, this
like I did.
that-
I'm not really that good with
size
CSS.
something like this, you know.
This is what's happening.
Copy this.
If I go with phone,
So now
it's working
first
perfectly.
name is equal to get
And
first
if I
name.
go with iPad, it's also working
put that in
perfectly. If
here.
I remove this, it's
Last
perfect.
name,
But then when I do
put that
this
in, get last name.
and remove the phone, it does
Oh,
this.
sorry.
And it won't work.
Yeah, you know what I
But
mean,
just see
right?
what size is that.
That-
And what size it
It's-
does not working. You can just check it what size is not working.
But it's working, it's just about Chrome. It's not figuring it out.
is
Maybe-
responsiveness, yeah.
It,
Yeah, the
uh,
responsiveness is like,
you can
oh,
make it
So
less than-
now,
Oh.
Yeah,
this
see
is the
here?
code that JavaScript actually runs.
where?
It returns
So this
because
is
you
like,
have put it
they
here
reach
once
20 to
yeah.
walk away. I'm
First
going to
name,
check
you have put it
something.
So it's-
1020.
plus
about
the
size.
constant last name.
I think
If you
so.
make it
So the
less
constant
than
first
800
name is
pixels,
equal to
so
the
it's
function.
self-made everything.
But there's a problem,
Responsive.
just like
I
we
made it
did
like that.
before.
I
we
just
haven't
put it out, I
activated
just closed
this
it like,
function yet.
if, I mean, make it responsive.
So what do we need to
When the
activate it?
screen is less than
Yes.
800 pixels. You can close it with that.
Okay, and now change
And,
this back.
Media.
So get
Maximum
first name.
800 pixels.
Equal to first name.
So
So we want
because it's over.
if you copy this
800 pixels, it's
Yes.
just coming. I mean,
and
this,
replace it with this.
this
Because
laptop will be
Because-
coming.
because
Yes.
From 800 until 0.
here
it's
you are
like
get full name. You are passing two
phone,
functions,
everything.
Yeah.
Still not
and these two functions will be like
Okay.
assigned to these two variables.
Okay, you call this.
So these two variables are functions.
But
So you are not calling them. You are just returning them. This is why it's returning message, right? So you should call get first name and call get
Because
first name, and not
Get
just return.
first name
You got what I mean?
See
equal to this.
what I
But get first name is equal to the first
Yeah.
name here.
Don't just apply what I'm
Yes,
saying.
exactly.
Just try to think about it.
try
One
to
thing.
work with mobile.
If you're understanding, do it. Otherwise,
No, it's a little. It is a
You got
little
it right.
different. Yeah, yeah.
So you say
But
like
this
that,
is,
but the word-
because
This
these
is
two are
kind of
functions.
stressing.
Yeah.
Like this
And
is
when you call the
this
function,
is
it
like-
returns name.
yeah.
But it's
We
for
should
you
cut.
to kind of
That's-
try and understand.
Yeah, exactly. Because you are passing the
Function
function,
can be
you have access to
anything.
it here, and you
Yeah.
can
Pass
call it.
functions around. Yeah, because if you
I'll try to fix it when I get home. I'm hungry.
what would this return if we called it?
So, are we done?
Yeah, JavaScript.
Yeah, or just if we call it, yeah, we could console log it. What would it return? Yeah, exactly. So that makes sense for you. I can hear you like, well, of course, it returns Muhammad. And that's exactly the same thing we do down here. Now it's just a parameter on a function, but just as we did before, you know, you can do like this. And that oh, yeah. You can do like this, right? This makes sense.
console.log last
This
name.
returns Muhammad.
Why you are doing that?
But now we're doing with
This one?
the parameters.
Don't just apply what I'm saying to you. Try to understand why I'm saying that. Okay.
Should I remove this one? Yeah.
Probably.
You're welcome. Yeah.
And also,
This one?
no.
Well, it's
Inside the function, inside the last name function.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Close, very close.
Yeah.
Why?
Exactly the same.
Can you explain
Okay.
why you are doing
Yes.
that?
So you have an error here.
And you
Mhm.
have an
I'll
Because it's
maybe
all,
fix
I
that
mean,
first.
it's called the first name.
Fix
Yeah,
the error
but
here.
we have three functions. We can call
You see here
we can call
there's
them
some
without
red
like, putting
lines.
each function inside the other function.
So it's like saying I don't get what is the problem.
You are
Class.
Yes. No, not there.
You should define the functions separately and not like inside each other.
Oh, you mean this one?
Yes, the full name function. Like,
You need it between. Yeah.
just move it outside.
Oh, that's before, yeah.
Yes.
English the one.
Now,
And
what
so-
I want you to both to
Just
do is I want you to try and call your
No, you are still inside.
call it function A now. That's fine. I want you to try and
you should do
console
one of
log
the extra.
what you get when you call function A. What does it return?
Yeah, I did
Okay.
try.
So
And what did it
here
return?
you are
The first
returning
one,
first,
the first name,
plus.
and also the
So
last
you are
name
calling
was
first. You should
like
also
Ah.
Yeah, you did.
Let's try.
did.
Yeah, but then let's try it.
Why? Don't just do it. Just because I want to try to understand. Try to understand.
Yes.
It changed. Oh, yeah. It was.
Yeah, but this is a function.
You are doing
What this does is like function get first name, left first name equal
you are
first
doing
name.
plus
Yeah, it returns the function.
Yeah, it
Because
doesn't return all the
if you go back to the JavaScript,
I took the long ID, right?
yeah, but you see, function A is
You
a
should call
constant
the
that is
function
just
because these are
equal to
functions.
this.
and not variable.
Okay, it's just equal to
Like you are
this.
calling
And this is what Chrome is logging to us. Okay.
Now you
So I
need to
need
call
to take
like,
this one.
If you run this program, nothing.
No, you need
Why?
two things.
Because you are not calling anything.
How is it we activate a function? How is it we kind of
Activate or
execute
call
it?
full name function.
What is it we do to actually call the function?
Outside, of course.
Not just to
And
log
you
in,
need also like
call
to
it.
measure, so to
Get
do
back.
the function.
No. if I make a function,
Now we need to call the following function.
Call it outside.
no,
Yeah, outside.
no, you know, I don't. How do you make this?
Oh, yeah, got it.
Yes, no, not that.
This one.
Yes.
We need to call, how do we call
Okay.
function?
If we
First
want to
To call function, we need to
activate
function
this test function, what do we write here?
No. No, we are not friends.
Say test,
So
and then we
we just
call
like
it.
for length. You want to call
When we
function.
call
So
the
you start
function,
full name and after that
then you
the
activate it. Before you've called the function, it's just like you make a function, and then it's just sitting there. It's waiting. It's waiting. When you call it, then it's activated. Then it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I need to create a new variable called first name and set it to Mohammed.
So I need to call it.
So
you call
Every function or just
full
for the
name
last
needs
one?
two arguments. So
you have actually done it the right way here. You have called the function.
So pass first name
Okay,
and last name.
but when I tell you, let's try and test it and see if function A works. If you just say console log function A, the only thing you're logging is a constant, which is just a function, but you haven't activated it yet.
And there is something I
When
want
we
to
do this,
which
now
is,
we have
you
called.
don't need to name.
Now we have activated the function. We have executed it.
Should I try now?
Yeah, try see what we get. Undivided. Okay, so let's go back into the code. So what are we actually doing in the function A? So we are making a variable called first name and assigning it to the string of Mohammed. And then we're not doing anything.
And it still works?
Okay? What we want to do,
Oh, it does.
we want to
But how come we didn't change?
Try to understand this.
Okay.
Because this is really important. If you understand this,
So now we return it. So that means when we call function A,
Is it because
we'll
function
get this string.
or can it be
So try
named
calling it and see
anything
what we
and
get,
it
if
still
that
works?
is correct.
the problem is not the name.
Yes.
Or the name is
Okay.
not that important.
So
What's
now we're
important
happy.
is the order.
Okay? So now we just
So
need
the first
to.
parameter here will be assigned
Yeah,
to the
that's
first
one as well.
argument.
Yes.
The second parameter here will be assigned to the second argument here. So it doesn't matter if you name this like Muhammad or I don't know or X or Y. As long as, for example, if you name it X, X will be equal to first name, and you will call X here, and X is first name.
Yeah.
And semicolon, always
Yeah,
try
but
and
I mean,
remember the
why didn't you
semicolon.
name it the same thing you named it here?
Why should they name
Yes.
it?
Oh yeah.
So it would stay corresponding. How, for example,
You should,
this is
you should
called-
not, you should not, you should not mention.
What's that?
Because the function is created on the board.
Let's have a look. You can test
So
it.
you
How
should not
can we
think
test
like
it?
a function should be dependent on
No, we still
the
need something.
like serial word or something like that. So this
So
function
here
should
you've
kind
actually
of
made it correctly.
like
Actually, you are done now.
where it gives
I
like
haven't called it
it's like
Yes.
console log or stuff happening. So it should not
No,
be
what is the problem if I say that again?
the same thing.
I need to call
But
like
then-
console log and bold the function.
How does it
If
know
I want
which
to get
one?
full name, then
I told
Or is it just because of the order?
because we are calling for full name
Yeah.
and you
But-
are calling it with two arguments.
Get full name is a function.
Two arguments here.
It has two
There is two
parameters.
parameters here.
So when we
First
call
parameter
it,
will be assigned to first name.
Oh,
we
these
need to
are,
call
these
this
stay the same, but these we can.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because I'm saying first name, and I'm replacing first name
no.
by first name.
This is a placeholder. and
Exactly.
this
It's
is
just a
one.
placeholder.
it actually says it
Exactly.
here.
That's what
Name.
Exactly.
It says here it takes two parameters. Get first name
Yes.
and then another parameter that we cannot see.
Now I got
Maybe we
everything.
can-
Okay.
So it takes get first name
First name
and then it
and
takes
last name.
get last name.
And then you combine the
So it
last
takes
name.
two
I want
parameters.
it to function.
So when
You're
we
calling a
call
function,
the
Call
function,
both of
but
them.
you are
we need to
putting
give it
These
a
are
function.
placeholders.
Otherwise it's gonna
It
say,
doesn't matter
We
which
put
one.
hey,
very good.
you tried to call me, but you haven't given me what I need. You know, I need two parameters and they should both be
And then
functions.
you log.
But you haven't given that to me.
So now
If I just
Yeah,
call
the
it,
console
Yeah,
log.
exactly.
Just
Just
do
like
like this.
And after that, the
But
plus.
inside
The function's gonna be mad.
function,
because
function.
we haven't said
Computer doesn't
what
know
is
what
get
to
first
call
name
it,
going
you
to be
don't
equal to,
say what
and
for
what
it.
is get last
And you
name.
call the
So
function.
you write the first name
So what do we need
and
to
the last name.
put in here? We need to say
But you should not call full
Get
name.
first name
First name.
is equal to function name.
Because full name is full name. So you are calling the function is
Like this.
that's reversing.
And
So you call full name and
now we have called it
last
correctly.
name.
Now we are
You
saying
call first
get
name
full
and after
name.
that last name.
Okay, we call that.
You stick them.
We say the first parameters that is get first name should be equal to the function that actually
Now,
gives me
you
the
write the
first name.
function first.
And you call
You
it
write here which
second
function
parameter
you want to call.
That
Right.
is called get last name is
Which
equal to
function
the
do you
function
want to
that
say?
actually returns the
Try
last
to
name.
use the key.
Last name or full name?
Okay, and then what this function does
Because you
is
already did last name.
okay.
So you need to call first name.
Get first
you need to call
name.
last
Full
name.
name.
You don't need the function.
is equal to function A.
Call the function.
Last name is equal
And
to
you
function
put the
B.
plus sign.
So like I told you, you know, you can do like
And
this.
you need to call them because you're not coming.
Yes. Now inside there has
This
to
maybe
be
makes a bit
parameters
more
so
sense
the
because it's like,
computer knows
oh,
what
function
to
A,
call.
well, it just, you know, returns the first name.
full
Function
name.
B returns
I
the
think
last
I'm
Okay,
Cool.
if you write last name,
Yes,
it will
but
only
you
show
need to call
last
also
name.
first name and last name.
Basically, just make a space between
You want the full
between
name.
the names.
Both.
Yeah, you can say that, and then it returns that result.
My first name is Tala and my last name is
Yeah,
Abdullah.
very clear.
If I want to say my full name,
Yeah,
I say last
So try and
name
call it,
plus full
try
name.
and log it out and see if you get the right one.
So, what do you write in here?
I want
Yes.
Try now. And if there is
So what do you
no
do?
error,
So we need to log the result from
First name is not the
get full name out. No,
why first
You
name?
say
you have
first
Because
name,
you are
but
calling
you
full name.
actually don't do anything with the result.
and
So
you
you should
say
call the
last
first
name.
name. Because the full name takes two
And
parameters.
they're both
to
part
log
of
it
this
out.
function.
Yeah, console log
So
again
you
full
say
name.
full name,
Yeah, what was it we
first
just discussed
name, last name,
when we called?
plus, yeah,
You mean the function?
first name and last name.
Full name takes two parameters.
We need to call it like this
First name and
when
last
we call
name.
get
And you
full
have
name.
first name. And you have first name
Because
here
here,
and last name here. Which
You
is two.
made
So
the
you should
function
parameter.
name.
First name,
You
comma,
return
last name.
first
Function
name,
name.
Yeah, this one.
Yes, exactly.
plus.
What we want to do is just we want to log
So
this
here
out.
we're telling you
What do we get when we log this
what
out?
to replace it.
We log the function
You
out,
get it?
not the result. We just log the function
Not
out.
both of them.
Okay? So the difference is here we call the function, so we get a result now.
Okay, again, one more time.
Here we
Here,
just log out the
The
function.
you
function.
made the
Yeah.
function.
So
You made a
you can see
function.
the difference.
First name. You made it function. You made it return first name. And then you, yeah.
So
this is-
now I want to
And then you made another function.
put a space between the
You made
Okay.
last name. And you returned
The
open.
plus sign.
So if someone
And then
returns last
This
name
first name is
function,
Shota.
Inspect
Is
this.
that
the computer will write open.
Carton.
This is what
So
you will
in between them,
return.
you need
So
Then
here's
you made a
the
function.
difference.
full.
This one is the result,
They cannot put it here because here you are not combating the function here.
and this
Try to
is
understand.
just calling the function. It's just kind of,
Yeah, I'm just.
oh, what's the
Your
function
function
look
Full
like?
name, there's X and Y.
Where
When
we have the
computer
parentheses and we give it
wants
right
here,
and then we
it will
call
tell you
it
X and Y. Now we need to know what is X
Inside,
and Y.
you can do it very easily because you are
First of all, we tell the computer to return X
It's
plus
the difference,
X plus Y
it's
when
like
we
the
call
difference
the
from
function name. And then
from
and
making a
now
function.
we need to write
what you're gonna return here. For example,
What is
if you will return here like here, you return here. You call function. You call function. JavaScript will go to function. We call this function. We call this function. And the function will return here. And the full name will be replaced by what? By the return of string, which is here. And console log will just be here. You got already?
What is the
Yeah, at
difference
least
here?
try to. It's my problem.
These two.
Yeah, what is the difference?
like you.
What
The
was
last one will will see the result, and the first one will see the whole function.
Yes, exactly.
Wait,
And that was what that was the difference from here to here. Here we see the result because we call the function, and then we get this back, right? Whereas here we just return the function because we haven't done anything with it. It's like, you know, just returning an array. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll give you an array. You haven't done anything with it.
Because you said return x and y. What does x and y?
Try and remember this,
Yeah,
right?
if you say like
Actually, and I think I'll just do it on the yes.
But I see from Talas there is
What does it say?
you say there is some
If you click here, try go back
specific
into the browser. Try click.
you say it is just occupying space.
It's a placeholder.
Space holder. So
So
in mine here
Close enough.
is it is the same
yeah.
like
It's the same everywhere in every level.
so if I
This
add
concept
like
applied to Java,
But
JavaScript.
there's,
so
there's
if
nothing
I add like
complicated.
maybe something like this it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you should. But when you call first name, you should always the same name as here. Because
So what is it we want to return here?
You got
We
to
want to return this, right?
because I'm saying first name,
Last name.
It is the same.
first name fine, and first name fine is referencing the first argument, and the first argument is equal to the first.
Yes.
The first parameter is equal to the first argument that is passed here. Yeah, we call this scoping in JavaScript, and it's really crucial for us.
First name.
So we need to kind of document more about it, and it's really it makes sense that it's kind of
Yeah.
Like
You
why?
see, there's a
Yeah,
small
exactly.
I
difference.
understand.
because it's compared to
The
any other language.
F capital.
It's really different.
It's unique.
It's unique.
These
JavaScript
two
is
are not the
unique.
same.
Lot because
It's
I
name
used to
and
program
first name.
Java and stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Java
just
is
the
difficult.
you just miss
But when it's
the
come to
mistake.
the weird
Yeah.
stuff in
Yeah.
JavaScript, it's really weird.
And then
It's extreme weird.
So it kind of makes sense when you are stuck and this, but you are just learning. That's the thing.
Last time I was working on HTML, CSS, and I understood nothing, but it worked. I'm like, yeah, I learned.
Yeah, sometimes it's just working and you don't know why. Sometimes it's not working. And you
Don't know why.
Hvis du skifter de her til first name og last name, så skal du også skifte de her to til first name og last name.
I mean, the function, the young product. No, so the
Men du må ikke skifte dem her til first name og last name, fordi der er ikke nogen
It takes a lot of
der
time.
hedder.
Are you studying web development?
De hedder get first name og
Which,
get last name.
I said it's computer science actually, but I still, I'm from Algeria. So, yeah, you know Algeria.
I'm
First
crossing
name.
the world map.
Okay, yeah, it's in North Africa, next to Morocco and Tunisia.
Lad os prøve at lave det. Bare sige...
But like there is no stuff.
Yes, so...
But I know the country of universities is fully So
First name.
it's perfect fully by yourself. Everything. So I'm kind of self-taught. I didn't learn anything from the university.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of, because you can kind of get the process, because there is something interesting in computer science or web development or now I'm learning iOS
Fordi
development.
her der siger, har de her to parametre, har vi ændret, så skal vi huske at ændre det nede i funktionerne
I
også.
don't know how to describe
Og når
it,
vi så
but
kalder
you get like
full name, så er det
you start just learning by yourself.
når vi snakker om
yeah,
first
you
name,
don't-
så mener jeg,
No, I'm
Start
just
getting into it.
Get
and
exactly.
then
I'm one developer. I work full time. I have a job.
function.
I moved from Algeria to
Yes,
US.
the
like for the job.
function, get first.
But now I'm learning iOS.
Mhm.
So you get like it's a habit.
Definitely.
You start
Yeah,
learning.
if you learn
you
a
read
program, then you can still learn
Yeah.
it from the rest of them.
exactly.
Yeah.
And like once
Get used to it.
exactly. And once you learn the
Yeah.
first like
den funktion, som jeg gerne vil have, at du skal køre,
I was an
og
Android
first name,
developer.
Yeah.
I moved to
and
backend.
get
After that,
first
I
name.
moved to React frontend.
Den funktion, du skal køre, når det er last
So
name,
kind of
Moving
get
along
Yeah,
by yourself.
yeah, exactly. And it's becoming kind of
Yeah.
habit. You don't need like university or any book or something to learn. You just learn by yourself.
And that's a very good way of thinking.
Yeah,
Because right now I'm still an asylum seeker.
Yeah.
And I have to do everything on my own. So after a while you just get used to it and everything
Exactly.
becomes easier.
Exactly.
It's not as hard as
You
The best feeling in the world. Yeah.
I was so
It's
it's
like,
kind
look
of
us here. It's good. Just on YouTube.
exactly, yeah, that's the thing.
Because I would actually want to continue with multimedia. Multimedia design, communication,
Let's take a 5-minute break,
Yeah.
and let's meet 20 to
You need to
2.
understand, like front-end
Okay.
development is really advanced. I'm not doing HTML, I'm doing JavaScript. And JavaScript architecture will truly take off. For a lot of code, I'm not going to actually do some stuff like that. So it's a lot of code. It's like a backend.
Now front-end is most important.
Yeah, front-end is really important. Like more prestigious. That's yeah. I mean, more all this stuff. Programmers? Like
How many?
Yeah.
Just one language, JavaScript.
Mostly JavaScript.
Yeah, there's and TypeScript and so on. I use JavaScript.
This year. Next year. This year. And last year I think I accepted the one Danish,
Yeah.
but I couldn't.
Yeah, I'm trying starting Danish business.
That time,
But
that
I'm
time,
not, I don't know.
that time I haven't finished Danish class. They just spoke with me. They said, okay, you're accepted. That's something. English reasons, so the time is over. This is a document. It starts now from the first of April.
Yeah, I don't. It's kind of.
Because there's much time.
Yeah,
More years. So that's it's not possible to run.
You need JavaScript. That's really possible.
Yeah. JavaScript is for app for image.
Yeah, you can now everything else. You can even like so yeah, it's really something.
Yeah.
You know, there's this app. It's called Duolingo. And you learn Danish on it, and it's very easy. Yeah, now, but like I'm telling you because if you have friends and someone
Yeah, I
needs
know.
help, you can help them.
I'm in class 10 now.
I want to go into school, but they keep telling me we have no money because you're 17 years old.
No, the thing is so when you get the sign,
But I can go to the university.
there is Model 4, dance 2, Model 5, when you got the assignment.
I finished dance 2 to play.
They have changed.
I talked to the principal and with the chef, and he said I can go to Danish school, but you have no money.
How much is that?
No.
Just one.
Everybody transferred because there's no money.
If they send you to me, okay, if they send you to me, they know the Danish. If they send you to me, one person. Maybe finish with Danish lessons. They will also keep coming saying, I need to also go. Why that girl can go and why I cannot go?
That's why I think they say they don't have money.
They just tell you we don't have money. They have money.
But there are 2 people in my class who went to BUC and Danish school.
It's not, I mean, paying money for it.
Okay, there's another.
Not Red Cross. There's nothing with it.
But what about the girls who went to normal Danish school, class me class?
Needing us. That's BBC.
Yeah, but to normal Danish school, not to BUC.
Yeah, normal.
Yeah, see, that's why I'm telling you, I can go, but The school they chose for me, it's 1 hour away, and they have to pay 680 kroner a month.
Both of them is same. You see in the school, normal school is same. You know what?
No. VUC is for 18 plus. I'm 17.
VUC, that's okay. That's for the
Yeah, but I can't go to VUC
Yeah, I
because
know.
I'm 17 years old.
VUC for the people, those who have stopped their education,
Mm-hmm.
the school education, and after a while they stop. That's for them. If you're over 18. VUC in the school, the lesson is the same, but school they start from the classroom. That's for after 6 years. Both of them is the same. Both of them get money from the government. I mean, Red Cross they don't need to pay. That's the government. That's why it's a
No,
big
but they
issue.
pay for the transportation,
Yeah.
they pay for books, pencils, anything I need. No, they pay, Red Cross. The people, I don't care who pays.
Yeah. But they can do it, but they don't want it. Some of
I have many people in Yelling. They go to normal school, they go to BGC, they go to dance school. I told them I'm telling them.
Why you have money for them, why you don't have money for them?
Because they started in 2015. In 2018, the Red Cross is not getting any budget. They're not getting enough money for anything. They closed down so many projects because there isn't enough money. It's not that they don't want me to go. It's that they can't let me go.
It's also something like children, they have money for research for more than 10%, and then 1% is coming. Say like
Everyone who applied in 2015, 2016, they're in school.
so that's why.
Everyone who applied in 2017,
I think it is just a rule. They have money, but they just change their rules.
That's what I was saying.
As you
I
said,
finished everything, and the school principal from the other school, the one I want to go in, he accepted. And the principal I am working with right now, Red Cross, they have accepted. And they talked to the bosses in Copenhagen here, and they were like, we can't let her go because we're not getting enough money from the government.
it is elections, I would say.
They just
Because if they are still managing to pay for
I was thinking like that, but then they closed many projects. They really don't have money. They wouldn't close something if they would have the money to budget it. They closed the TV class. They closed the club for 17-year-olds. They closed other stuff I'm not too sure about because I wasn't involved in it. I was in a class called the teen class. It was only for 17 years old because we're not children and we're not adults. They closed it because there's no money.
maybe they don't have.
You're Benjamin and he's
Jonas.
Jonas. Okay, I was thinking,
Yes.
is it Yusuf or what? I can't remember.
Jonas. Cool. I think we'll get started again. So I think there were some difficulties in this exercise, and yeah, let's get to that. If you want to talk, can you go outside? Cool. The difference between calling a function and just logging out a function, I think that was probably nearly the most difficult part of this exercise. So let's try and do a constant that is equal to test, and this constant logs out the string of test. So if we say console.log test, what do we get now? What do we see in the console? What, sorry?
The word test.
No, we see function and everything after constant.
Yes.
Test.
And why is that?
Because we're not calling the function.
Yes. We haven't called it yet. We haven't activated the function yet. So always when we make functions, if we never call it with parentheses, then it'll never ever run. Okay? Especially if we do it like this. There are some other cases that you'll see later where you just give it and it'll automatically run. But unless you see these, you won't see this function running. So the difference between these two is that here we are logging out a variable that is a constant called test. Okay, so we go looking for this variable. Oh, it's here. Perfect. What is this constant equal to? It's equal to this function. Okay, so logging out test is just like doing like this. It's just replacing, because that's how constants work. You can just take this, because this is equal to this. Fine. We log that out. Okay. So here we are not. Here it kind of makes, you can see it very clearly. We are not calling it. We are just logging the function that we have created, and it's sitting there and it's waiting. It's waiting for what?
Right.
Yeah, it's waiting to be activated. It's waiting to be called. And when we call a function, we do it with these parentheses. So if we go into the browser and log this out, so we'll see two things. One is the function, okay? Then we see test, and then we see undefined. And undefined is a little weird, and that's because we are not returning anything here. So when we say to Chrome, it's like, I want you to log this. Then it goes into the function, it runs it, and then it says, well, you told me to literally log out the result because you've called it, but we haven't returned anything. So the result of calling test is nothing, because we're not returning anything. If we return hello, now it should say hello. Okay? We can also do this instead, where the function doesn't log out anything. The only thing it does is it returns a string called test. So when we call this, we'll just see the string test. Okay. So if you have some code that it's not working, or it just seems weird, right? Check if you are calling your functions. Okay. Cool.
Can you please zoom in the browser?
Yeah, sure. Like this? Yeah, so it's just the difference from the function here and then actively calling the function. Okay, cool. Let's move on to code execution. So, in JavaScript, when you let me just write here code flow. Basically, how JavaScript knows in what order to run functions, or when to run specific functions. It creates something called the call stack. The call stack, yes. And we'll start off a bit more simple, and then we'll get a little bit more advanced. Do we have something to move this forward?
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Control that.
It's not me. It's not me.
You deleted the Wi-Fi password.
All the cops. Okay, so in JavaScript we have this thing called the call stack. So you can think of the call stack as an array. You know what an array is?
Yes.
Yes.
One thing I know.
Okay. Have you learned how we add values to an array? Yes.
Push it.
Push it. And what is the opposite of pushing? Pop. Yes. That's the correct.
What?
Popping.
Pop?
Yeah.
Yes. So pop. Push is. This is English. Push is adding to the array. So if we push elements, we'll get more and more elements.
They
So-
cannot see anything.
I think this would get better.
We are using our intuition to understand what is meant.
I think that 4 is way.
Okay. So here we have an array. The first element is called global. Then we push 3 things to it. This is just for the sake of how you push and pop from an array. When we push, we add to the array. So if we push form, we'll push it here. Okay. When we pop it, then we remove it. So pop, and we do like this. If we pop it again, then we do like this. If we push the string low, then we'll have the string hello here. Okay, so that's how arrays work in JavaScript. You can push and you can pop. You can some more things, but we'll learn about that next time. So the call stack is like an array, but it's JavaScript's way of keeping in order what kind of things needs to be executed. Okay. So let's. I think I'll show this over here. Let's make 2 simple functions. Function A and function B. This one, it just returns A. Very simple. And this one just returns B. Okay? So, in JavaScript, when we call a function, we add it to the call stack. Okay. Oh, sorry. So let's draw the call stack here. So now we have added the function A to the call stack. So that is when we call the function. So how this works is we call here, and then in here we say add to call stack. Okay? When we are done with the function, we pop it. We remove it. Okay? So how this would work in JavaScript land is it would
when we see that we have called function A, we go into function A, and then it will add it to the call. Then, when we're done with the function, so that means here, then we remove it from the call stack, and then we can kind of continue on with our other functions. Okay? So let's say we do like this. So we call function A. When we call function A, we go into the function, we add it to the call stack, and we return a string, and then it's like, we're done now. Cool, let's remove it from the call stack. So it looks like this. It's gone to begin with. That's when we are here. Then we haven't called the function yet, so we haven't added it. Then we go into the function, then we add it here. We add it when I mean add, I mean push. Okay? So we add it. Then we return it. When we have returned it, then we pop it from the call stack. Okay? So, can someone run through what happens when we call this?
You add it to the call stack?
Yes. When?
When?
Yep.
After
Yeah,
after removing A.
What, sorry?
After removing A.
Yeah, yes. So after we have removed A, we go down here, we call it, and when we call it, we add it to the call stack, then we return B. So that means here we add it. This is rubbish.
Can you just
What, sorry?
can you check this?
Oh yeah, I know.
Probably we can use it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's
but-
difficult for you to draw. Yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of true. But I just wanted to show you one more example, and then we'll go to that
Okay.
and show it like the practical.
I think that
Yeah, but basically,
that one is not good. You are using. He had a.
yeah, this one I think you're right.
Yeah.
So we have the global.
There is a paper you have.
What?
So we have
A tissue you have. You can use that.
Oh yeah, there's some toilet paper. Probably that's better. Yeah, so we add A, we call it, we return it, and then we remove it. Then when we come to B, we do exactly the same thing. When we call the function, we add it to the call stack. Okay? When we're done, when we return it, we pop it. Cool. Now it gets a little more interesting. What if instead of calling B down here, we actually call it up here?
So
Okay,
basically,
so what was it I said? When we call a function, we what?
we add it to the call stack.
So,
Yes, we add it to the call stack. So let's just start out really simple. We go down to A, it is added to the call stack. Okay. So now we have function A. It's added to the call stack. We are happy. Now what happens?
We
We
keep
have to go-
function A and we add function B.
We call function
keep-
B.
We keep function A. It doesn't
Yes.
goes, but
Yes.
we add function B in this case.
Exactly, exactly. When we call a function, we add it to the call stack. So it's exactly what you said. So we keep A because we're not done with it yet, because we need to run B before we add B to the call stack. So just remember, when we call the function, we add it to the call stack. When we're done with the function, then we remove it. Okay? Okay, so now we have called function B. Okay? Now we are kind of here in execution. What do we then do? What do we need to do here?
Return A.
Yeah, that's the next thing we need to do here, but from the call stacks perspective.
It will,
Remove.
they will remove it, the both at the same time, no?
No, not at the same time. When we are here,
B first.
we're not done with the function A yet, because we need to return it. But in just exactly this line in execution, we are done with B, so we can remove that from our call stack. So let's just do that. Then we do this, we return A, and then we're done.
Okay.
So that means we can remove function A from the call stack.
You call A, and then you call B, and then you remove B, return A, remove A.
Yes.
Okay.
But the only thing you need to think about is when we call a function, we add it to the call stack. When we are done with the function, we remove it. Then later on, it'll get a little bit more difficult, but that's for something else. But this is like the main principle. Calling it, adds it. When we're done, we remove it. And like Jonas said, there's a really cool tool for this, actually, where you can live see the call stack. And it's called Loop. So, let's try and see what happens when we run it. Oops, where's pause? Here, pauses. It goes pretty quickly, so I'll just try again. Okay, now we have called A, so we add A to the call stack, just like we did over here. Then we add B to the call stack. We can kind of see that it's highlighted, so it's like, okay, this is the next function I need to call. Then if we resume, so this will go into B. When it's called, it'll add it. When it has been returned, we'll see that B is being removed. Yep. And then A is removed. Okay? But this can get, you can kind of, not more difficult than this, but I had like an idea, so let's try and do that. So let's say, because for me this is kind of like a checklist, you know, when you're done with this, you just cross it out right. So let's say we need to do some different things for today. First, we need to pick up kids. Let's not do anything. We'll just do the functions, so you kind of get the point. We'll need to pick up kids. We'll need to do get groceries. What, sorry? Oh, sorry. Yep. And we'll have to do some work. But we'll say that get groceries is kind of we'll divide that into some subtasks. So for example, we can say, let's make another one called function buy groceries. And then we'll have something called function buy carrots. Okay, so now we have a lot of functions that actually don't do anything. But what we want to say is that we want to first pick up our kids, then we want to get the groceries, and then we want to do work. Oops, like this. Can someone explain me now how is our call stack gonna look when we run this with these functions? They don't do anything yet. So when we call a function, what do?
We first need to add pick up kids.
Yes, that's the first function we call.
Start call start. Then it was the function is
What's up? Yeah, yeah. And what happens when it's done?
when it's done, it removes it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what happens then? What is the next function we
It
call?
will be
Right.
Yes, exactly.
Then it adds it to call start.
Exactly. It's like exactly like you said. When we call pickup kids, we add it to the call stack. When we are done, we remove it from the call stack, and then we can continue. Then we go down and say, oh, what I need to do now is I need to get groceries. Cool. We'll add it to the call stack. When we're done with it, we'll remove it. So it is, to me, it's kind of like a checklist, you know. I need to pick up kids. I need to do groceries. And it goes like, okay, once I've picked up kids, I can do like, I'm done with this. Once I have gotten the groceries, you know, I can cross that off. But cross that off in JavaScript means removing it from the array, popping it. Okay?
But here it does not like carry all the three together inside the function.
Now here we just call them one at a time. And when one is done, we just move on to the next one. So let's try and see how that looks. So we should see, you know, pick up kids getting added, then it gets removed. Then we should see get groceries, it gets added, then it gets removed. Then it's do work, added, and then removed. Okay? So let's try and see pick up kids, get groceries, do work. Done. Okay? Cool, we're happy. But let's do this thing where we said, well, do the groceries. It's not just doing the groceries. We'll kind of divide it up into a few subtasks. So one of them, what did we call it? Buy, let's say, vegetables. I think was what I meant, right? Get groceries, yes. So in the get groceries function, vegetables.
It doesn't matter. We are not no one is native in this field.
And backfire when vegetables are wrote on the one is.
So now when we say that we need to do some to get the groceries, we have kind of divided that into some subtask, which is actually it's buy vegetables, and then inside buy vegetables we say we need to buy some carrots. Okay, so how is this gonna play out?
Pick up carrots, then it's gone.
Yes.
Then pick up groceries and it stays. Then
Yes.
pick up vegetables.
Yes.
And it stays. Then
Yes.
pick up carrots.
Yep.
And it goes. Then
Yes.
pick up vegetables. It goes. Then
Yes.
pick up it goes.
Yeah.
Then the last one.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly like that. So when we call get groceries, we add it to the call stack. Then we call buy vegetables. We add that again to the call stack. In buy vegetables, we see buy carrots. We'll add that again to the call stack. And then once we remove them, we can kind of see them go away. So we see get groceries, buy vegetables, buy carrots. Then that goes, that goes, that goes, and then do work. Okay? So it is kind of like a checklist.
It is.
Where just when you call a function in another function, you can't say, for example, with get groceries, before you are completely done with get groceries, you need to buy the vegetables. So you call that, and it's like, oh, I need to add that to the call stack. Okay. So this is the most important for you to learn. So what happens when it gets added to the call stack? There's some different things that happens. It creates the variables, it creates the scope, it creates a lot of things, JavaScript, but that isn't really necessary to know a lot about. This is the most important part because this can help you figure out
What to put it forward.
when different functions are called and when they're done and where they continue when they're done and stuff like that. And I just want to show you the last thing, and that is just to show you. Is it with a big throw? Hello.
Throw?
Yes. So when we throw, we tell it's with a small. We tell JavaScript to throw an error. So we say, oh, something's wrong, but we do it ourselves. And why I want to do this is because we can actually see the call stack in our JavaScript here. So let's reload this, and then we say uncaught hello. Okay.
Hello, and then no one catches it. I like this. I like JavaScript.
We do too.
We like JavaScript.
Okay, so if we fold this out, so there's an error very clearly. If we open this up, we see the first one is anonymous. That's like the global context. Then we see that A is on our call stack, and then we see that B is on our call stack. And this can help us when we are debugging, especially. Because when we can see the call stack, we can say, oh, it is called a function called B, and at line 66 there's an error. So we can go in here and we can see, well, where was this function called from? Not just that it's in this function, it's like we can see the kind of snugly weird way that JavaScript got to this function. And that can be, sometimes it's very difficult to know where your JavaScript has come from, especially if you use other people's code with libraries. Then you'll have some weird jQuery function that calls some other weird function, and then so this is very helpful for when there is errors. Okay, so what I want you to do now is like a small exercise. It's also in here in the exercise page, and you actually don't need to program anything now. You just need to write down. And what I want you to write is what are we going to log out, and how is the call stack, how is that going to look at every point when we call or remove a function. So you can just write it down on paper or on your computer, that's fine. But just go through this code and kind of figure out what is called when and how does the call stack look like. What does the call stack look like?
So it is kind of combining the two things that you've learned today.
I was doing.
Does it make any sense?
Just try to.
Part of it does.
Yeah.
The first part, I'm like, wait, what do I do with this?
Because I didn't get the function to call.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part, I'm like, I'm just gonna ignore it. This is probably
Yes.
a global one.
So I will start with just coming to here. Okay? So kind of
Yeah.
we call a function called first function. So what does that mean? With the call stack, how is that looking?
So, function to call, which is the first function.
Yeah, but what do we do when we call a function?
We call a function second.
It's a call. You call the first
We
added-
Yes! Exactly. It is added to the call stack.
Yeah.
When you
That's
call a
like it.
function in general, okay.
Yes!
Of course, it's in
Okay.
general. There's nothing specific about these functions.
No, I thought he was like, if I call this first function second, what happens? I'm like, wait, what?
No, like in the first, like in the beginning, you were just like trying to understand that when you call a function, you just call it. Now there is the call stack, so you are like having kind of bigger picture about what's happening inside the browser.
Mhm.
So try to think about the execution of the functions and also about the call stacks
Yes.
at the same time. So you have like kind of bigger picture.
And you know, like I did before, if this confuses you, where it's like function to call, so function to call is equal to second. It's exactly the same as second. So you can just write second here if that makes it easier for you to understand. Because function to call, like we said today, is being replaced by second. It is the placeholder. Okay?
We already have another function called second.
So second is this function. So second here is equal to second.
Okay, now I got it. I got it.
Okay,
Thanks.
yes. You're welcome. So second here is this. Probably should have done that as a constant. But
No, it's okay. We're learning.
yeah. Yes, exactly. Yep. Yes.
And then
And
it's finished.
how does the call stack look?
Anyone has an idea or something?
Because that is when we are open this function
Is this correct?
What?
Is this
we call it down here.
and
Yeah, but that's the second. So we call
We'll
it
try to do it again.
add it to the call
So-
stack.
As a hint, every time you try to analyze program or something,
Every
just find the
call
entry point.
function you add it to the call
Which-
stack.
second?
No, the entry point
That
is calling
means-
this function. That's the entry
And
point.
at this point
Because
when
these
we
are
open
just
here,
definitions. They don't do
the
anything.
call stack is
So this is
we
the
have
entry point.
one function.
This is
and
where
that's called
things
what?
get interesting. This is where the execution starts.
It's called
So we call first
first
function.
function.
We jump to first function.
Okay.
With second as this first parameter.
Try and write it
Or the
down.
first argument. So function call get replaced by second. We do for loop. We console.log I 3 times. So 0, 1, 2. These are the 3 things that get displayed like the first 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2. After that we jump to function to call, which is the first argument. Which
Is that
the
yours?
second.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we call this function.
Yeah.
And this function displays up the second function. So until now we have 0, 1,
Yes.
2, and in second function.
Yeah.
We continue.
So
we run test.
what is this equal to?
Test get called. Console.log.
Yes.
So 1,
It's equal to
0,
this.
1, 2 in first function.
But what is
the
this
test.
equal to?
No, in second function. I think this is a
Yeah,
test.
0, 1,
Exactly.
2 in
It is
second function.
literally
This is the
equal
test.
to second. When we
And
call
after
it here.
we jump to the
Which is
next line,
this
which is
function.
console.log in first function.
Okay.
So 0,
But
1,
I'm
2
try not to look at
in
this
second function.
yet.
This is
So
test
Like
in
let's
first
just
function.
say
Here it print
Here.
0, 1.
yes,
Oh.
correct. But how does our call stack? What does our call stack look like?
What?
At that point.
I need the same.
Okay. So,
When we
Yeah,
have,
yeah, yeah. So
we are not, we
this
haven't
is-
called functions to calls.
this is a problem.
But we didn't.
These are the, there's a lot of code.
Yeah.
But you need to find the entry
We
point.
didn't call it.
Where the execution
How can we
starts.
be in here?
This is
if we
definition.
haven't called it?
This is
We
definition.
said it
This
is
is definition.
0,
This
1,
is
2.
definition. This
But
is
if
a call.
we haven't called it, then that
Things
can
gonna start happening
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
So we call first function.
So
You give it second.
we call-
Second. This is the functions.
when we kind of start looking at
So
this
you go
code,
to
we
the
want to
function.
see where
run
is
this
the
function,
first
which
place
is the
where
first
we
function.
call the function.
with the
Where is
the
Yeah, we know the function called function.
because you
Yeah,
call
that's the
first
first
function.
place in the
You
code.
give
but
it
it's
the
not
second
the
as
first
a
thing
parameter.
call.
We didn't call
Yeah.
second.
Because
We didn't call
yes,
second.
yes,
But we pass
Yes.
second as a parameter.
That is the first one.
And we execute first function.
First function.
Function to call is second.
Yes.
So then
Because
we
it's
call
the first argument.
No,
And the first parameter,
This one.
first argument. So second
This is
function
the-
to call
so like
they are the same. So you do
just as
for
we
loop,
did before.
which displays 1,
First function.
0, 1, 2.
With the,
It's
with the
just
Of course, it starts with 0, so 0, 1, 2.
from the
After that, you jump to
Exactly.
function to call.
Yeah.
So we haven't
Function to
called
call
the
is
function. We
second.
haven't called
Because you
second
can't
yet.
find the first parameter.
Second is first being
You
called
got one?
down here. Okay. But what we are calling
No,
now
here,
is
yeah, function to, we call function to call. And function to call is the
so at this
first
point
argument.
we
And
have
what's the first parameter here? It's the second.
first.
So function call technically it's assigned to second. So you call function call, which is calling second technically.
That is added
So
to
you
the concept
go-
when we call it
You
down.
go
Okay.
you console
When we
call
are done with that function, then we can do it. But we need to do all
exactly
these
because
things.
you are calling this function. So you
Okay.
create new context.
And then you say we log 0,
We
1,
push something to the call
Zero,
side.
one.
Yes.
Here we push the first function.
Now
Here we are pushing the second function to the
Now
call
we
side.
go.
And we start executing.
Now we
just
call
show
the
in
function
second
called function to call.
And after that we call test.
What is that equal
So in the code stack we have global, we have first function,
Yes.
we have
Oh,
What
this
is
is
that?
inside.
second, which is
Inside this first one.
and we have test.
Yes.
This one.
Now test is done.
I see now.
We pop it from the code stack.
It's inside.
We go back to second. We are done. We call it test.
What's that?
The last statement.
Ends here.
We go back
Yes.
here. We console.
So when we call function to call, we look here.
We
What is
go
this
back
equal
here
to?
because first to call
Yes.
is called.
So where do we? So we go in here.
Is this like
Because we
line
call
through the like all
Console log
this?
is right in
So
second
we
function.
go
Yes.
back here.
Exactly.
We
But
console
what do we do? What do we do when we call it here?
and nothing to do. We pop up.
We added to the
Yes.
concept.
So what do we need to write?
Function to call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can
Just
either
try
call
to
function
try
call,
try to do
yeah,
that.
it's
Because I'm now
It's,
asking
it's
myself.
fine.
Now you ran
Okay.
test,
So
Yeah.
then
and I want to see how it is directing you to go to.
It's not directing me.
Yes.
If I'm
Yes,
here,
and what
and I call
happens
function,
then?
JavaScript will go and call that function.
To do
And after that, JavaScript will go back here to run again.
Is it?
So, for example, let's say I'm here, I'm in
Yes.
line 35.
And what happens
I'm in
now?
line 35.
Yes.
I call this function. We jump to it.
Yes.
JavaScript call it. Let's say a lot of stuff happening. We are in here. Done with the function. JavaScript will go back to line 35
This.
and go to line 36. So we don't have the end of the program. So JavaScript is jumping to
And
the
then
new
what
functions
can you
and after that like going back. So it's kind of stored. I was in line 35. And the next is 36.
Yeah, I see that. But I'm
And also in function to call, we are in 90.
Yes, that is a little.
We execute function to call,
But like I
second.
said, this is
We do a lot of
this
stuff.
is
Done with function to
This
call.
is the
Done.
parameter.
Let's go
So
back to
it's
function.
just like we did before. Now it's just
You
function.
know what I mean?
That's what makes it a little difficult. But you know, you can just say function to call is equal to this.
here.
And this is equal to second. So you can just write,
first
if
function,
that's easy,
second,
from
you say
second even.
this one it has.
But then it's like,
Yes.
it's a function.
And it goes here.
No, we can, yeah, that's what I told him. I probably should have made a
Like the same
second
as parameters.
essay constant.
Yeah, because first function equals second.
Yeah.
So it's like having the variable one function to call and assign it to second.
But we want to
They
say
mean
that
and stay.
The
for an argument to the function.
we're not showing.
That's the second one.
From here, then
Yeah, so the function we call it here is actually this one.
Function. We call function to call.
okay, from here.
No, we finish the for loop. We go to call the next line, which is function to call. Function to call is second, so we call second. We are calling function to call.
Function to call will be.
And function to call is what?
No,
Is second.
what is the first thing that we do?
So we start executing.
Because this is first
As
in
we
the code,
execute
but it's not what is
first
being
function.
called first.
No,
So the,
Yeah,
end,
yeah,
the, end,
yes.
the end of everything.
First function is the first one that is added to the code.
Exactly. We are start like going back.
So
Here we
when
start
we call
going
this, we add it to the
We
code.
go
step.
like from here, we go back to here, we go back to here. This is the call start.
What happens
So
then?
we have first function.
Then
then
now we
second
have
function.
now we
first
have
function here.
first
Just write
function
to
on the
visualize
call
it.
stack.
Imagine that we have first function. We have first function.
And then the second.
We have global.
No.
We put first function. We
Uh,
put second, which is function to call. Like function to call.
so we call
Global.
first function.
First function.
This
Second.
one is it hasn't
Test.
been called yet.
Done with test.
It is just being passed into
Done
the
with the
function.
second.
So second is now
First,
equal to
function?
function to
Yeah,
call.
We continue
Like
first
the
function.
example
seen
we
today.
had
We
in past.
So we go in here and we
done with it.
what do we log out here?
Super.
When we log out, yeah, but what is that going to be equal
You
to
want to start
when we
with
run the code?
3 times.
Yes, 3 times. And what is it gonna log?
So in here, it's
You don't. You only need to
This
look at
is
this.
this is the
before
entry.
you-
This is where the entity gets started. Because these are just
This one.
So we start
yeah, very good.
We
0,
call this function
1,
first function.
2.
Because it's second.
Because
So first
I should
function
be
to call is
smaller
three.
than 3.
Second.
So that means when it says, you know,
know,
3 is smaller than 3, it says, oh no, I can't do that. So the last one we run is 2. 0, 1,
But
2.
this variable
That's
is just
the
a
first
variable.
function.
It's referring the function. So when we say second,
What
you are
happens
referring
here?
to
Function to
function.
call.
Like me, when you say units, you are referring to me. But technically units is just a name. There's nothing special for units. But it's referring to something. The function,
What
when
is
this
function
variable
to
is
call
second,
equals
his name
It
is
is
second.
assigned to
Yeah,
second.
same.
So it's referring
So
to
equal function.
function. So when
It is
we
equal
refer
to
to second,
the
Yeah.
parameter function.
Function to call
So
six.
So we
what is
call
it we
function
call?
Okay,
call
what
first
about
function.
these things?
We're on
So
this
this
is
is
for
for
the
same.
total tree.
That's the
So
example.
0, 1, 2. After that, we call function to call,
After
which is the
what do we
second.
call the
Which are basically this one by second.
to
Okay,
call.
are you with me?
Yeah.
We jump to
Function
second.
to call. Function to
So
call.
Because of the clock, it's second function. We're on test. Test.
Second.
Yes, this is test.
Exactly.
Done with test. We return
Second.
back to
Second
when we
function.
started running test.
So you should.
We are not.
So that means
Yeah.
in here,
We are
when
not
we
here.
write function to call,
We go back.
what we
And
actually
console
do
will work in first
is
test.
second,
Okay.
Yes.
which is this function.
Which test is here?
Yeah.
Okay?
So
This one.
Because
test is
this
there.
one,
Yeah.
like I said before,
This
is
is
being
this is
replaced
So you should
This
put
one
by
first.
second.
It will bring
Yeah.
out.
So you could actually, instead of writing, you know,
That will
function
be
to
the-
call, you could
For
just
loop,
write
Yeah.
second.
Yeah.
After the for loop
Function that
instruction.
we actually call here.
If you put this one, then we.
And that's why I said
Then see what
And then we
the
can
things
and
where
then we put that
I
one
copied, you know, second. And then I just pasted it right into here. But then it's a little easier sometimes to see. But the
This one, this one is the trigger.
Yeah, that's
it gets replaced by what you call
Stop here.
Go from here.
Because I start running
So
function
we
to
call
call.
second here,
Function
not
call
function
run
to
Right.
call.
second.
Yeah, from
Second
here,
run test.
Yeah.
Done from
That's
test.
fine.
This
what
Done from
happens
second.
then?
connects with-
Where I start calling second.
What happens
Yeah.
when we call the function?
I continue from here.
Because function to call, the
So
function to
finish.
call
Yeah,
is
we are
second.
assigned to.
And finish.
So
We go
we
here
do
because we start
this.
running here. Here
And
finish.
then go
There's no
here.
more.
Yeah, that's true.
Done.
But
Now
what
here
we
starts.
can-
in regards to
Function
Alright.
call.
call
What is more classification of that?
Second.
Then it was already in the class function.
When we call the function, what we do,
Are you done with the?
We console
we
this.
edit to the call stack. Yeah. When we call the function, we always edit. Yeah, but I know it's difficult.
You understand? Which is assigned.
So that means at this point, before we console log, we edit to the call stack.
Something
Now we have the second.
This function to call
So now we have
is
two
assigned
things
to
on
the
the call stack.
parameter.
We have the first function.
So
Because we call it down now. We call it the editor piece first. Then we look at the function to call. And we see.
Okay, wait, yes.
Oh, that's equal to second. Okay, so we add a second to the call stack. So now we have first function and we have second. What do we do in second? We log out the create function and then run. Yes, so what does it do? What happens when this goes
If I say
what happens with the call stack when we call the function? Cool. So now we have first function, second, and every time we call the function, and to the call stack.
So it's a mobile.
Okay?
yes.
Now we have added it. Now we can log out. This is a test. And what happens now?
But I have choose that.
No, which one will that remove first?
Here we have the parameters.
Yes, because now we have logged this out, so that means we're done with it. We can kind of cross it out, right? So we say, okay, test this done. We'll remove that. Where do we go now? Yes, because now we have crossed this. We have logged it out. We have run test. We can remove second. And then what can we? What do we now do?
And then
Yeah, not quite yet. Where are we now?
function to code and name.
Now that
Nothing parameter name
Yes. No, not the.
So function
it will
to
not
code.
be edited. We will just run in first function. So we'll run in first function, and then now we can remove the first function. When we have logged this out. Then we so it's like first function added to the call stack. Then we go here. This is the most difficult part. Okay? Function to call is equal to the parameter of the function. So now we need to look for, well, what do we call this function with? We call it the second. Okay, so we add second to the function to call because that's the function that then we log out the second function. Then we call this. We call the function.
No. I'm not going to say more, then I can get confused more.
Then we log out. This is a test. Now we're done with it. So we can test.
First function.
Now we see
We go
the
here.
second. What was that? Oh yeah, that was our function.
And then we go here.
Now we
And then we go to second.
Now we can
Console log, test.
and then we are
Console log, and then finally we console this.
can you try
Last
on
thing.
You write it down?
But I'm not sure.
Because I
What's
It's for you. I'm not sure about coming back again here.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm trying.
He told me so, and I was asking him
That's
how.
That's in
What makes it again going back there?
You can actually see that. That's in flip.
One more time. From the entry point.
Yeah.
First function.
how does that
Function to call is second.
Yeah.
We loop through here.
Yeah.
And then go to second or go to function to call?
We go to function to call,
Okay, which is the second?
which is the second. It's like an alias.
Yeah.
I
So
think
do
he
we
does.
console log first or do we go
Actually,
to
maybe he
second?
does something where
you
he
cannot jump a function.
he
You still have
removes or
to
he
do-
adds the console
It's like,
log.
I don't know, it's like, there is a function to call.
On here.
I cannot
don't
just
know
forget
what
about the
that is.
function and go and
First
do
function.
other things. I need to finish my function.
So we go to
so
second
We
first.
go to second.
See, I told you! Oh my gosh, you confused me.
No,
I don't know why he
no.
has added these
That's right.
checks to the
So what do we do
I
with
think that
this?
is a little bit.
We keep it
but
till
we'll
the
see
end.
when it's
We
done.
keep it at the end. We cannot like
Now
pass
we'll
something.
see functions
Like
call.
JavaScript
I'm
is not
not sure
stupid
what
or
will-
something like that. We have responsibilities. We have
Function
fucking
to call.
function to
We
call.
need to do
Okay.
Which
this.
is we can
So
continue
function
doing it,
call, and then we
after
lock
we can like
and
continue the
second
rest.
function.
But before, well, yeah.
Then
Yeah,
we'll
it's like
test,
if
like
test
we did.
was before
Remove
console
test,
log, we
remove
go do
console.
test first
And
and then we
Exactly.
console.
This and how JavaScript keeps track of these things using the code stack.
Yeah, you can
For
just-
example, here we are inserting something in the code stack, which is the second. But JavaScript inside the like store something, which is line. The next line is 20.
Yeah.
So when I finish this code, when I put it from the code stack, I continue from 20.
Yeah.
So there is a mechanism inside JavaScript to keep
Oh,
track of what I should like continue.
okay.
What's the next step to do?
I got it.
Nice.
I think after this we'll have a break, a lunch break.
Food.
Yes, and then we'll come back, and then it's gonna be a bit more hands-on and not so theoretical. So, yes. Yeah. So when you're done, you can just go lunch. I think we'll meet at like I don't know, 10 to 10 to 3. Something like that. Yeah.
Where do you all get the stickers for JavaScript and HTML? Like every programmer I see, they have the exact same stickers. I'm like, I want some.
Generally,
Meetups.
conferences.
What? Sorry?
Conferences.
Yeah. Conferences
meetups.
and meetups.
I need to go.
Yes.
Yeah, you
Invite
need
me.
Ah, wow, you have a lot.
a lot. But some of them, like for example, a lot of them I just bought them, so I
Yeah.
paid to get them. And some of them, like DLM,
Yeah, it's right.
like it's from. You know this thing?
No.
what that is.
It's
It
a
looks
programming
pretty, but
language.
I don't know it.
You
Which
know,
one?
it's called Elm.
Um.
Elm.
Oh, Elm.
Yeah, Elm.
Ah,
It's a
okay.
replacement for JavaScript.
Oh, it looks pretty.
Yeah.
And that's very
The creator of
important.
Elm was here like
Yeah,
2 months ago or something.
Here in Copenhagen.
Yeah, here in Copenhagen.
Ah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Where did you get the badges?
The what?
Those badges, I mean.
Some of them I bought them, and some of them are from conferences and friends.
It's so cool.
Where did you go?
There is online websites. I think you will go to.
Just get over it.
I'm in silence because I can't buy online. It's not like.
Genau. ونورك كل شيء ونورك أصلاً كل شيء برش تشيبسوس صار كنا هذا هذا كلاس بيجي قلت نيو كلاس إكسشن كلاس كنسينا كل شيء ديف كلاس بيجي إن بوزيشن أو ده ليبل شيء ديف كلاس تمام مشان ده continue display flex او الاین فانکشن شون سنتر خیلی خوب نه.
میدونم من فلکس باش خیلی کار کردم ولی من برای اون چیزی میگم یه
سه تا پاکو اینجا سه تا نبود مثلا سوال میخوایی نه ما خودم میریم امتحان کردیم
من میخواستم اینپوت باشه که اگه اونو بندازید اینپوت نیست
میدونم اینجا را میش خطا داره این فقط همیشه دیف کلاس بزنیم اوپن چک کلاس کرد هم لیبلش هم اینپوتش هم خودم امتحان کردیم بازم بعد نشان میدم به بچه‌ها ما خودم امتحان کردیم فقط بین از اینها اینپوت کرد لیبل اینپوت لیبل هر چند خود می‌خواستیم اینجوری می‌کنیم فقط div container dot container display flex align content का center तमाम अगर center वाला right इसको मुझे बराबर माफी
Here. چیز کردم میگم اونجا خزم میدن اون بالا
Very hot in here. That looks nice though. Looks really nice.
I'm reading that design right now.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's why you're here. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I love it's a lot of projects. It's a video dog.
Oh, I like it.
I didn't make it myself. It's tutorial thing.
What's on it?
I didn't make it myself. I did for free. It's tutorial.
Ah, cool.
But someone
Okay. Well done. But I can see that you've done some programming before.
I have worked 1 year on web responses.
Okay.
I started from and I have also 3 hours other also commitment
But just like us dance? Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. Cool, så skal det bare lære mig.
Jeg kan ikke være rigtig godt
derhjemme, eller hvad? Nå. Er det svært at tage sig sammen, eller?
Jeg tror, det er ikke skolen. Når jeg har lektier, fordi jeg kan rigtig godt lide det.
Ja.
Jeg kan ikke rigtig godt lide skolen.
Nej.
Jeg vil hellere være hjemme og lære programmer, end jeg går i skole. Når jeg får en lektie, eller når jeg går på skole, så tager jeg så meget om skolen.
Okay. Altså vi siger med det her, vi har den her time, og så har vi næste gang. Det bliver også sådan lidt teoretisk. Men efter det, så bliver det mega nice. Fordi at det bliver sådan noget med at hente data fra andre servere, og så kan man rigtig hurtigt lave nogle virkelig fede ting. Og det er lidt sådan, det er verden, der åbner sig op for en igennem alle mulige API'er og sådan noget. Så vi kommer for eksempel til at lave sådan bare en simpel hjemmeside, men som hele tiden viser, hvor mange astronauter der er i rummet lige nu, og bare sådan nogle lidt sjove, skøre ting.
Arbejder vi med React,
Nej, React det kommer senere. Så vi kommer bare til at fokusere på grundprincipperne i JavaScript.
Efter når vi er til det der advanced class.
Ja. Ja, der kommer ikke næste igen, tror jeg, React. Eller også så er det Node først, eller. Men der kommer i hvert fald React på et tidspunkt. Ja.
Der er stadig svært på Java i dag. Det er rigtig svært.
Okay.
Jeg kigger på sådan noget arbejde, ligesom Canada eller noget sted.
Ja.
Så nu ved vi det som et finance, så skal vi gå på Java. Men nu her, jeg kan gå til finance, så jeg kan også skrive, jeg kan være یکی از کار responsive and یکی از اول دیکوری det som JavaScript
Nå, men så det skal nok komme automatisk. Altså, hvis du kan de der ting, så er det bare naturligt at gå lidt mere over JavaScript vejen, hvis du vil lave nogle lidt mere sådan skøre, sjove ting.
Men han har set programmer. Han har kommet til at gøre det sådan. Han har fået det arbejde i skolen. Han har arbejdet med skills med data.
Ja.
Ja.
Men altså, hvis du følger med i det her, efter det her modul, altså så bliver der bare sådan, så kan du godt, med de ting, du lærer nu, der kan man godt komme ud og få et JavaScript. Altså, et arbejde med JavaScript, fordi så kan man alle de fundamentale ting. Efter, ja, så er det bare øvelser. Og øvelser og øvelser og øvelser og øvelser. Og de principper, vi lærer, altså mange af det her er noget, som man godt kan komme op til et interview, og der står, hvordan gør vi det her, altså der, det er simpelthen det, vi har gået igennem i dag, sådan noget, til at stille til det interview, og sådan så.
Ja, det er også lidt.
Det er lidt tricky. Ja. Nå.
Okay, no. It's also good.
Yep. Let's just comment this out. Okay.
Are we still recording?
Yes, we are.
We did pause.
Yes. It's all taken care of.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We can go back.
exercise 2?
Yes, sure. Let's do that. Let me just find it here. Yes, so this one. Okay, so should we go through what happens here? Cool. So I asked you to kind of figure out both what is logged to the console, but also how the call stack is going to look when we call this function. And basically what we look for when we start any piece of code is like, where does the code start? Where do we actually begin doing something? And some of you were a bit confused about, I asked you where do we call the first function, and you go down and you see function to call, and you say this is the first function. Well, it's actually not, because we haven't called this function first, because this is a function and it won't run unless we activate it, unless we call it. Like we said before, with the difference between the test. Let me just see if I can find it here. So you see we did the difference between just logging test and logging test that is called, is that when we call it, we activate it. So we don't go in here first. The first thing that we do is down here, where we call first function. And every time we call the function, we what?
Put it in the call stack.
Yes! I want to be able to call you in the middle of the night, like, what do we do when we call the function? We add it to the call stack, yes! What do we do when it's done? We remove it, yay! Okay, so we call the function, first function, we add it to the call stack, then we run this code, and it just logs 0, 1, 2. I think you've learned about for loops, so we won't go into too much depth with that. Yeah. The next thing that is like, what is going on here? Is function to call. And you were like, what is this? Well, it's just like we had before.
The cakes.
Yes, with cakes. So we say function to call. Where can we find this variable? Well, it's actually the parameter to this function. So that means when we call first function, we can't just call first function without any arguments. We need to call it with a function. Okay? So we say, okay, when we call first function, what is the parameter we give it? So we say, where do we call first function? We call first function down here, and we call it with second. Okay, cool. That means second is our parameter. So a parameter was, we replace it with the argument we give to the function. That means that function to call it, when we call it like this, suddenly function to call is equal to second. So you can, no, I can't do it because it's in here, but you can literally just write second here. That would be the same. Okay? And then it's easier, because then it's a second here. We call the function called second. Then you look, where is the function called second? Oh, it's here. Okay, now I see. Okay, cool. So now we call second function. So what do we do? Add it to the call stack. Yes. We log out console log in second function, and then we call the function called test. What do we do when we call this function?
We call function test.
What, sorry?
You add test.
Yes.
Call stack.
Yes. So what do we have now in our call stack? What is the first one?
The first
The
one.
second.
First function. And then what do we have?
Yeah,
Second
function.
Yes, second of function to call. It's like the same. I'll call it second here. And then what do we have?
Test.
No.
test,
Function.
Function.
Function second.
test.
and then we have
Yeah.
test. And
No, because when you function to call is the second.
so we go in. We were agreeing as far as to second. When we call second, which was up here, we add it to the call stack. Okay. Then we log out in second function. Now we need to call test. So before we can remove second from the call stack, we need to first call test. That's why we can't remove second, because we're not done with second yet. Second does two things. It logs out in second function. The other thing it does is it calls a function called test. And we need to complete test before we can remove first function. We need to say like, when I'm done with this, then I can remove second from the call stack. So we add test to the call stack. So that means now in execution we are here. So we have just added test to the call stack. Now we go here in our execution, we say log, this is a test. And when we are done with this, what can we then do?
We remove.
Whoa.
Yes,
Remove test and
then we can remove it from the call stack. So we say, now I'm done, which is like saying, it's like crossing this one out. I'm done with this, so I can continue. Okay? So now we are done with the test. What happens then?
Close second.
Yes, exactly. So we remove second from the call stack. And where are we now in JavaScript? Where is our
Console
execution?
logging first.
What line?
The
19.
function.
19. Yes. Now we are here and we are done with this. We can cross it out. And that was what we did when we removed second. Now we're here. So we log out in first function. And what can we then do? Yes.
remove function. First function.
Yes, remove first function. Because now we are completely done with this. We have logged out 0, 1, 2. We have called function to call, which was second. And we have logged out in first function. Then we can remove it. It's first when we are completely done with the function that we can remove it from the call stack.
What was confusing is function to call and function second. Yeah.
Yes.
They're like, is it one or it is two different?
They act as the same.
That's
Yeah.
why I was telling you the other time that again we are calling function second.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is just the parameter for the function, and the parameter works as a placeholder for something else. And that something else was in this case second. Okay, I think maybe I'll do a small exercise with this in the homework, just so you can really get this concept.
Yeah, that would probably be
Yes. Okay, let's get to something a bit more concrete. So now we are going to be interacting with the with the DOM. Okay.
DOM? What does DOM stand for?
Document Object Model.
Model.
Yes.
You can use that on a web page.
Yes. So I don't know. Did you learn about a little bit about the DOM in HTML and CSS?
Nothing about them.
Every time I see DOM, I'm like, nope, I don't know anything.
Okay. Okay. I
You
think.
have like a brief idea about like the root and HTML tree structure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a brief idea.
It's gonna be a little tight. How can I say? So the DOM is in JavaScript. We can interact with HTML via the DOM. So basically, I can't. There's like a website where you have like HTML and then it's represented as a tree and then it's like the rendered, but I can't remember the name.
I don't know. But
Okay, but basically, when the browser it reads all the HTML, let's do like something simple here. Okay, so this is the HTML. What the browser does when it renders the HTML is it looks through the HTML and then it represents the HTML as a tree. So that when we have this, we are going to have HTML, and then we have the head, and we have the body, and then what do we have? We have a div, and we have a script. So the browser, it takes the HTML and converts it into what is called the DOM. And the DOM is a way for JavaScript to interact with HTML elements. So the browser takes this and makes it into this tree structure. And the reason why there's HTML in the top is because actually it looks like this. So we have the HTML, that's the top here. Then we have HTML has two children. Have you heard about that? In CSS maybe?
Yeah, first child.
Yeah, exactly, first child. So basically, head and body, they are children of HTML. Like you can see here. If you imagine like a family tree, you have HTML who's like the parent, the good old father, right? And then he has two children. It's a head and it's a body. And then we go down. Is there any more tags in the head? And we look, no tags. Cool. We go to the body. Do they have any children? Yeah, they actually have two children. And what are they?
Div and script.
Yes, they are div and script. Okay. So that means the HTML or the browser kind of goes, oh, okay, I need to create two nodes now. These are like nodes. I need to create a div that is children of the body and a script tag that is also children, a child of body. Yes. So if we change this a little bit, what if we do like this?
Is this the child of the child of the
DOM is the document object element.
Object model.
Document object
Yeah,
model.
but
It's a tree of elements.
we use the document object element.
They use animate, yeah.
Get
That
the-
Yes, exactly. We'll see that.
You
just
are
in a
manipulating
second.
the DOM
No.
by using these functions.
Yes. So how would we draw this over here? Where do I need to start drawing now?
It's split. Or
You
it's
add
not
this
split,
child of
but like
div.
the
What's that?
Child of div you add.
Yes.
I believe it's child. The div has one.
And what do we need
Ally
now?
is a child of UI.
What's that?
Ally,
Ally.
child of
Ally.
UI.
You are list.
So how many?
Two.
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 Exactly.
Okay. But this we can use in JavaScript, and that is very cool. And I'll show you how that looks. That was like a very quick introduction to the DOM, but you get the main points, I think. So basically, if we want to select, let's say this class, call it wrapper, how would we do this in CSS?
how would we select this?
We can just say
Dot wrapper.
Yes, dot wrapper. Okay. So let's say document.
Get
If I
element
delete
by
by
class.
class.
Yes, but I'm gonna teach you one that's a little bit easier, I would say.
More efficient.
No.
Not more efficient.
I don't think it's more efficient, no,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it's a little
It's the
easier.
best function, like query selector. It's
Yeah.
better than
Yeah.
the other. This is like the best
So
one.
you can select any item,
You can use CSS selectors here.
Yes.
Yeah, like the class selector or
Exactly.
ID,
You can mix them
ID
here.
selector,
It's like
so you
CSS.
Just put it there.
Instead just of using like
Like any
ID
ID
or
Or class.
So
yeah, you can use like
Can you
full-fledged
set two
CSS
values
selector
in?
here.
So like dot wrapper
No.
dot Kazakh.
Exactly.
But we can
ID
select
is
two
possible.
values
So you are
with
querying
the select.
asking.
Okay, so you kind of get this, I think.
Yeah.
Sounds like. Okay, so how
Something quickly.
so how would we select it? What would we
Dot
write here?
class. Oh, yeah, I mean dot wrapper.
Yes. Okay, and let's try and console.log wrapper. Okay, let's see if this works. Yes. So we have we have the element here represented in HTML. So now we can get elements in our page. What we sometimes want to do is, and what you're going to do in the homework as well, is you're going to change the text of the selector. So
Using JavaScript.
using JavaScript,
I know
yes.
how to do that. I researched it.
Class equal to cakes. I normally program on Mac, so I'm always a little rusty here. So we have a div called cakes, and let's select that instead. Cool. So we have found it here. It hasn't got any width, so we can't really see anything. But we have selected it here. We can see that when it's highlighted. Now we want to cakes element. Now we want to set the text of it, so we can do that with inner HTML equals to okay. Let's go here, and it says uncaught reference error. Wrapper is not defined. What do you think that means?
Wait, can we look back at the code?
Yeah.
Where's that?
console.wrapper as well.
Because we haven't changed the we have a class in
Console log wrapper.
What's the problem with that?
We don't have a wrapper anymore.
Yeah, we don't have a wrapper. Exactly. We don't have a thing. We have cake. Let's try and work that out and see. Cool. But we have a problem. Nothing happens. That's annoying. So how I kind of want you to think at a point like this, where you're developing and you have done something and it's like nothing's happening. What's wrong? So what I would do now is, like, I know it's something to do with inner HTML, but I know that's where I have the problem. So I would go like, yeah, what would you say?
Is the TML supposed to be capitalized?
Yes.
Because it's an abbreviation.
What?
It's an abbreviation.
Abbreviation. Yeah.
So
But
the letter should be.
how you should kind of go about this is, you go to Google, you write JS inner
Double N.
HTML. Okay. Then we see, okay, DOM inner HTML. And then, I would just take this and copy it into here. and then we would have the right answer. But sometimes that can help. But this is a little tricky because actually we couldn't, it didn't say that there was an error, it just did nothing. And those errors can be difficult. Where the other errors where it says this variable is not defined, or this is a constant, like that you can fix, but these errors can be a little tricky.
And sometimes when you have like a lot of codes and then there's just one bracket missing.
Yes, exactly. Cool. So now we can set the text of a element that we have selected. That's cool. But we can set a lot of other things. So I just want to show you a quick one, which is style. So let's say background
That one I know.
color equals to blue. Okay, so we can set different properties, and there are so many. But if you don't know which one to select, or kind of think, is this possible? You can just write like JavaScript, HTML, attributes, or something like that, and then maybe you can find some place where it's, there's a source attribute, that's cool. You can set width and height, you can set health, you can set so many things, okay? But the background color is just one of them. And you're going to be using the inner HTML in the homework.
For example, any color, or you give it, for example, in style.css. So when you target it here in HTML, style background color, or maybe text color, anything. So you just put there also the color of that. Maybe if you want to another color, so you can just put it there.
Yeah, you can do it like this, but this is not the best practice. The best way of doing this is actually changing the class name.
Yeah.
So for example, maybe you have a button, and one of them is big and one of them is small, and you want to do that with JavaScript, where you want to set the button big or small. So you don't want to do my button.style.width is equal to like big and small. What you want to do is you want to add a class that is called big, for example. And then what the big class does in CSS is it has a bigger and it's wider and it's higher. So instead of using it with styles, use it with CSS.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is it's very difficult to debug if there's an error in your code and people have kind of overwritten CSS, because CSS is for styling and JavaScript is for functionality.
And
so it's very good.
Change it here in JavaScript as well.
Yeah, you can. Yes, you can. You absolutely can. Okay, I want to show you something else. We can say constant div, and then we can create a new element.
Oh, I also researched this one.
Cool. So now we have an element, and let's set this inner HTML to new div. And so now we have created a new element and we have changed the inner HTML, but it's not in the DOM yet. We haven't added it to the HTML. So that means if we or is it? Sorry, that's because I used the same. Yeah, I need to use div here. So if we go in and look now, we haven't got the div with the text new div, because we can log it out, but we haven't added it to the HTML yet. We have just created it in JavaScript. So what we can do is we can, for example, should we get now? Let's make let's add it to the body. Oh, sorry. So we would like to have the div maybe somewhere down here. So what we need to do is we need to select the body. Can someone help me do that?
Select the body. Div.body.
What, sorry?
Body.
Yes, body. And then we can go. Oh, yeah. Okay, I didn't know that. Cool. Then you can go append child. So that's kind of like this, where we have a parent, but we want to append a child to it. So we add it down here. So we should see the same thing here with body. That the thing with new div, it goes as a child to the body. So we have the body here, and then we have new div that is a child of the body. So now we have added it to the HTML. But before we do that, we don't have it there. So it's important also to add it into the HTML. Okay. I want to just ask you quick, have you seen this before for each? No. Okay. Because I think what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the last exercise. It's called exercise 3. So, to begin with, we should create an array of strings with your favorite dishes. Okay? So create a new array and then just add some strings into it. So with JavaScript, like we saw just here, we create a new UL element. So like I did here I created a div, but we want to create a UL, and then we want to insert that into the DOM. And you can do it like here, where I said select the body and then append it. Then I want you to loop through each element of the array, if that makes sense. So yeah, you can make a for loop that loops over your array.length. Then that'll loop the amount of times that you have in your array. Okay? And then for every iteration, you create a new li element, and then you set the text, the inner HTML of that li element to the favorite dish that you are now looking at. Okay? And then you append that to the HTML. So what that should give you is like li and then ul, li, with your favorite dishes. Okay? Let's try and see if we can. We'll be here to help. So yeah.
Can do this.
Yes, you can.
No, you can't.
You're supposed to encourage us.
Of course you can.
create the URL and array element with the JavaScript or just?
You don't have to, but you can. You need to create the li with JavaScript.
Okay.
But the URL, you can make that yourself and then select it and append the li elements to it. That's fine.
Okay.
Otherwise, just create the URL, append it to the HTML, and then create the li in the loop and append that to the URL.
Yeah.
So you have like URL and then li as the children.
Yeah.
How are you?
That's
Good. Good so far. Learning about functions. Yeah. You had these guys before?
Yeah.
Was that your first time with the JavaScript?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It was fun. I learned a bunch.
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
Hey, I'm Lisa.
I met him before. You
So
remember?
Yes, true. When you teach them, I learn so much.
Read a lot of documentation.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, you want to be sure that what you say is completely wrong. Yeah, thrown in the deep end again. Every time today. It's exciting for the graduation.
I am so happy.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to seeing the presentation.
Yes. Do you have anything?
No. Yeah, I teach the HTML. Both of them nice because they're like two classes put together. Yep.
The homework level is like
Yeah, we have the first one.
I think I came just one class. I think you were not here. Yeah. And I substituted for you for one, just one class.
Yeah. That was, we were another place before. It was so close where we were. Like super cold, so everyone was in jackets and this is a bit better.
Such
yeah.
an improvement.
Yeah, it really is. Nice lunch and everything.
Let's talk.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's not too bad.
Oh, that's cool.
So, I would say before you just code everything, code like one little bit and then make sure that works. Because now when you run all of this, there's a lot of code and there's a lot of debugging. But, so for example, to begin with, I would maybe just, insert URL into the DOM. See if that works. Kind of look at the HTML, has it been inserted? If it has, cool, I can kind of move on to the next part. Where now you're nearly doing everything at once. So I would start just like you have here, created the URL, and then I would add that, append it. Yeah, exactly, like you have here. But check if it works.
Check the whole thing maybe.
Go to the index, that HTML. This? No, yeah, well, you can't see it right because you've just added a URL. Now you can go into the inspector. So we actually have it. So it did work. Ah, okay. Okay, yeah, fine. But try go back.
When you say pen child div, the div is the like constant, right?
Yes. And then I
So
would have
when
this
I'm
line
running
just like
child
that.
UL, I'm
So
basically
it's like
writing this
we
one,
create it
this
and we
one.
edit.
It's the same thing. You
Yeah, but like if I write for example talent instead, do I
Then
pen
comment
child
all of this
talent? Yeah.
And also here you put talent, not
Oh, okay.
because you're referencing the same variable.
So
you could
now
use URL,
let's see.
you change the text inside the URL and you append it to the body.
Yeah.
Let's go to the console and see if
I'm gonna keep it
everything
like this
is
for the second.
working. Oh, we have an error here.
unordered list, which we can do.
It's not a function. It's going to
that means I give it that pattern meaning for the thing that what they need to do.
if I look at this. Yep. No.
Mesela ki böyle
It's append. I'll just zoom in. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that you were.
Perfect. Okay. So now we have that. We have. Now we need to make the folder. Okay. You don't need to wrap it in the function. No. No. You can just write the folder as is.
No, in the
Yep. Yes. What is the copy? But no. If you look at the exercise, it says you need to create an LI. So for every folder you create an LI, then you set that in HTML to the dishes, and then you append that to UL. Okay. Yes.
No, it's not wrong. You're doing a good job. Because you know what's going on, you know up in China, you understand things. But you just need to restructure. structure ليش؟ يعني تعمل أفهم you are like doing that, but we already have the dishes. So we can.
No, I think it was a stupid mistake.
Group chose the array.
No, it's not.
And inside it,
It's not coming up.
that's easier than imagine if you have like one.
So what is the last bit?
You write one. Try to do that.
Change the inner HTML. What do we now need to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we need to not print what's it called? The function.
I'm done. I just.
Okay, you're done. That's fine.
We need to append it.
What about you?
This one.
Because now it's just in JavaScript, but we want to add something.
For your
But use this one. Use the URL.
The objects don't put
URL is just your.
the URL there.
Yes.
So now is reference error. They are not strings. Yeah.
Nice.
Where I only have to string this exactly. I wish to do like a lot. I forget to put them in strings. And of course, doesn't it work?
it's in
We need to do the
for dishes, that's the one.
element UL. So you need to make a variable. So like I did up here, constant maybe UL element equals document of create element UL, and then we need to append it to the body. So actually, if you look up that, it's quite similar to the bottom part. We create the element and then we append it to the body. But we just don't want to create a div, we want to create a UL.
You say that we need to create with a list of additions.
Yeah, but we should not create this little UL. We should create.
So you can do this, but probably it's better just to use the UL because you have created it.
So.
Yes.
And favorite dishes is it's defined here above the top.
Yep.
So you are using favorite dishes before,
Can I see again?
but we resolve in error. You know that because you are facing a variable that doesn't exist.
So I would change this around.
But
So
still,
it's like
you read
so that this line is before the end because you wanna say
I think
I
So
Change the inner HTML.
Just read it.
Then when I'm done with all the processing, then
but
I
you're not naming it.
You're
So
using
you're
graph API,
here
you're
you're
using
defining something, but we're not executing that.
So you understand all the functions, but
the name of the
instruction
function.
so I think the inner text will just
that's
look at
something you need to
literally
know.
text elements. Where
Where
if you set the inner HTML,
So,
you can do
create
like
an array of
p
strings. You
tag
already created an array.
then yeah, after it's also.
any HTML that you like.
Yes.
Where when you use text, you can only set
Yeah,
text. So if you do like inner text,
We are
you
creating,
have your
for example,
p tag,
here we are creating
low,
a
and close
This
the
is
p
the
tag.
diff create your.
Then that
That's
is
the
literally
second
what it's going to be like.
No, don't go. I'm trying
It's
to
not gonna create the p tag
That's
for
what
you. But if you use inner
So we can,
HTML,
like,
that will create the p tag.
So we are only creating.
No, so we
It's
only
like text
show here.
text.
So you have
We're not
dishes,
just
you look,
saying
you do show the array.
So
Inside, you
The
do, you create.
Yeah,
And what? Like you
from
create.
legit. So inside of the UL, I need
Let's say
this
create
conditions,
or
right?
create
So
an
how do I
URL.
do that?
You created it.
The line
You
of
So first you want to create this probably
You can create
URL.
and you assign
this in a variable.
which is one
So
item of the array.
Yes, and then you want to add, you want to do append, just like we did up here. You want to append the URL to the body.
You got the idea? Try to do it.
And when you have done that, then you can make a for loop.
It's I'm going
No, don't. Pressure.
What's that?
Not yet. When
for
I'm
loop
done.
or it's supposed to
I
be
need to
here,
try it out
just
first. So go and
after
say something.
this one.
Where is this?
For-
Look.
For loop is after you have inserted,
I don't
after you have appended this URL element
No
to
worries.
the
I'm
DOM,
not judging.
then you can start with the for loop.
Yeah, we want to. I need to try it out first without pressure.
But I would first say, like we did up in the document, that query select the body,
Some
append
just some
child,
just something.
URL.
Just something.
Because then we have the URL in
Why you are
in the HTML,
this line
and we can start adding the li elements.
Why
And I think we could just new list of child string. I think it's
It's not string, it's in array. You are putting an array. So
Yeah, that's the one.
now you can do it.
If you write document dot document
I was doing.
this
I told you. We should like. If you see.
this dot append child
You see. We just create and insert. Create and insert.
in the function.
Create and insert. Create and what? And insert. You are querying.
Yes, exactly. And then we move this.
You already saying that I have a URL and I want to query. I want to get it from you. But the exercise said create a URL. Create.
So now we have created the URL element
It worked.
only in JavaScript.
But
And then-
actually inside
Yes, okay. I'm sorry.
I'm not querying something. We're querying
To
here.
say
But create a URL.
query,
We don't have a URL.
Select
We don't have a URL.
just like body, and then append child.
So it's working.
And it is this.
Try
Yes, it's fine, right?
right select.
I'm so proud.
the
Big S.
yeah.
Can we see? Can you go to sources? And are doing putting this JavaScript in that index?
Select with an O.
So if you go to
Yes.
brackets
Yes.
and you go to your HTML,
I just wanted to take the traditional one.
That's we need something up
You should do
there.
that. Because it's a test.
yeah, that's
One thing we select. So
You are
we need
querying
to
the URL.
select the body.
yeah.
But you already have URL in a variable. Why should
Oh, I
you
don't
just
have
use
Can,
it?
can you see where I'm looking?
So
Optimization.
now-
You know, every time you query selector,
Yeah.
you just
I got it.
looking and searching.
So that's
Now
where I'm
you
looking.
then you can just
So it's exactly no, don't worry about
Oh,
it.
and start.
Just-
It's exactly the same, but just with the URL instead of the
I'll
div.
put this
Yes,
for
much
efficiency.
Exactly.
Now what you want to do further? Yes, exactly. It looks through the number of dishes that you have,
Yeah. That's
and
it.
then you kind of do the same. Create. You create a U, not UL, but a line element. You set the inner HTML to the dish number that you were on, and then after that you append the li elements to the UL. Okay. But first create the for loop that looks over the number of digits.
You see if the number functions.
كيف
Let's put a constant log here to see or actually just right after this, so we can see what li is. That yeah. Li. So this one going to be that.
No, but how you are doing dual innovation? You are changing the dual should contain the list of items and not just random text. Why you are putting like you have like inside dual
Because it's not
dot allies. Inside each ally there is a text.
I don't think it's
But inside
creating this. But we created this,
Yes.
so I think it should be the same.
Exactly. But
So
you should not
even
like
if
make
we
the
do
ally
get
like
to the function,
you have
yeah, so it is
should not
the
make
UL.
the content of the UL one ally. But you look through the
So it
features,
seems
you
that
create the ally,
I would just
and you append it to the children of UL. Good one? Yeah, and there's a lot of allies, not just one ally. You keep append and then keep like appending and that.
yeah, just with increment.
Try to
I'm actually looking forward for the homework now.
That's good. That's good. But this is, if you can do this, the homework won't. It's not that difficult. So.
That's why I just like it would be the first easy homework.
It's because
Don't get too used to it though.
Easy stuff.
It'll soon go downhill, I'm pretty sure.
Exactly. We can give you much harder one. If you want. If you
No,
want. If you want.
wait, I'm not ready. I need to raise my self-esteem.
Okay, so I think we are about to be done with today. I just quickly want to run through the homework for you guys. So let's just see here. Week 3.
What? Sorry?
Can you make it to the function so we can see how you call it?
How we call what? Sorry.
The function.
Can you solve like the problem using functions? You are asking about that?
Yeah.
So he wants to see like functions.
Okay, we can maybe do that after we are done here, because we should finish quarter 2, and I just need to explain the homework, but we can do it afterwards. That's fine. So, if you go to the JavaScript repository and go to week 3, then we've kind of structured it this way that there's like the review that I'll put up, which is just basically explaining you about what we've learned today. So this will come up sometime, maybe tomorrow. Then reading is for next week. So this is the things that we want you to read for the next week. It's going to be about array manipulation and then JSON. And the last thing is the homework for next week. So you should make an array that contains 10 strings. And they should be book titles. So instead of favorite dishes, they should be book titles.
Favorite pastime.
And then, like today, we make a new UL, and then we add li elements for each of the books you have. So let's see. These strings should be book titles. You read. yeah, so like we did today, we create a for loop that creates individual LIs, and then you set it to the book title. But then at point 4, instead of just having an array, now it's in an array of strings. You change it to an array of objects. Okay, and the objects, they should have these fields, these keys: title, language, and author. And then we basically want to display the IDs again using the for loop, but now with the objects instead. And in the end, we also want in the objects to have like a key called, for example, image source. And then instead of just creating LIs, we want you to create LIs that have a background image. And how you do that in JavaScript is using the source attribute.
Background image, like behind the word?
Yeah, or background image, or you can use the source. So basically it's gonna be an array of your favorite book titles and their image. Yes. So that is gonna be the homework. It's pretty well detailed here. So and please write us if you have any problems.
Yeah, exactly.
There are some free code camp challenges that you can also do, and I think I'm gonna do another part where we kind of play around with having functions that have parameters that are also functions, and kind of call, doing these things with the call stack. Yeah. But what I want you to say, or what I want to say is, please start early and then write us. It's so important. Write us when you're in trouble, because a lot of times when you have trouble, it's like the smallest thing that kind of needs, so we can push you on, so you can get to actually program. But so often it's like the smallest thing. So if you spend more than like 15-20 minutes trying to figure something out, just try and write us on Slack. And what we're gonna say is just, post this question on the Slack group. You can still write us, but we're still gonna say, post the question on Slack, because maybe some of the other are also struggling with the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So start early and write us when you have problems, and we'll try and respond as quickly as we can. And then another thing that I would kind of like to stress a little bit is to beautify your JavaScript and beautify your HTML. So there's this site. I don't know if you know what that means, but it indents it correctly. So some of you would write HTML that looks like this, where it's like really messy, and then me and Jonas, we go through the code and we're like, what?
Especially if you have really like big and huge like code base.
Yeah.
You really need to follow kind of.
So you really need to do this, especially for the JavaScript, because it can be so, if you're like in an indentation with a loop and it's all messy, like this is so difficult to read.
1,000 lines.
Yeah. So take your, if you don't want to while you're programming, kind of make sure that it's indented just before you hand it in. Copy it over here, press beautify, and it'll indent it correctly. Take this and bang it in here, right? Just so it's correctly indented, because it just makes it so much easier for us to look through.
On Visual Studio itself make it.
In Visual Studios there are even plugins.
Auto formatting.
Yeah, exactly. There's plugins for a lot of editors. Definitely Visual Studio or what's it? Okay. So I think that's about it. Thank you for today.
Tack för det.